Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto summon himself in world of DxD to get harem with Rias, Akeno, Ophis and Xenovia Quarta. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Unforeseen Summoning. The air in the Valley of the End was heavy with the ghosts of battles long past. Water cascaded down the stone faces of the two colossal statues, their silent gaze locked in an eternal struggle. Naruto Uzumaki stood on the head of the first Hokage, the setting sun casting a warm, orange glow across the water's surface. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the surrounding forest, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and the promise of rain. It was a peaceful scene, a stark contrast to the thunderous roar of Rasengan and Chidori that had once torn this valley asunder. He closed his eyes, letting the familiar sensations wash over him. The thrum of nature's energy, the distant croak of a toad, the faint echo of a promise made and a bond reforged. This place, once a symbol of his greatest failure, had become his sanctuary. It was here that he could truly feel the weight of the world lift from his shoulders, if only for a moment. Kurama, a silent passenger within him for so long, was a quiet, rumbling presence, a comforting weight in the back of his mind. A strange sensation, like the pull of a magnet on iron filings, pricked at the edge of his awareness. It was faint at first, a subtle tug at the fabric of his chakra. He dismissed it as a trick of the wind, a figment of a mind finally at ease. But the pull intensified, coiling around him like an invisible serpent. His eyes snapped open, the serene blue hardening into the focused gaze of a seasoned warrior. This was no natural phenomenon. It was a technique, complex and powerful, unlike any he had ever encountered. The air around him began to shimmer, the space distorting as if seen through a heat haze. The very ground beneath his feet hummed with an unnatural energy. Ancient symbols, glowing with a crimson light, materialized around him, forming a complex, overlapping array of circles and runes. It was a sealing formula, but of a design so alien, so fundamentally different from the Uzumaki seals he knew, that it might as well have been written in a language from another world. Kurama, he sent a silent query to his partner. I feel it, the great fox rumbled in his mind, his voice tight with a tension Naruto had not heard in years. This is not of our world, Naruto. It is a summons, but not one of our toads or any other creature I know. The pull became a violent, irresistible force. The world dissolved into a vortex of screaming color and sound. The scent of rain and earth was replaced by the acrid smell of ozone and something else, something cloying and sweet, like overripe fruit. He braced himself, planting his feet firmly on the stone, his chakra flaring to life, a golden aura erupting around him. But it was like trying to stand against a hurricane. The bowls blazed with an intensity that seared his vision, and with a final, wrenching tear, the world vanished. He landed on his feet, the transition from one reality to another as jarring as a physical blow. The air was thick and cloying, heavy with the scent of decay and something else, fear. He was in what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse, the moonlight streaming through grimy windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The space was vast, the ceiling lost in shadow. And he was not alone. A young man, no older than himself, with spiky brown hair and wide, terrified eyes, was on his knees. A crude spear of light piercing his stomach. A woman with long, flowing crimson hair and eyes the color of a summer sky stood before him, her hand outstretched. A soft, red glow emanated from her, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness. Behind her stood a group of others. A raven-haired woman with a gentle smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, a handsome blonde man with a sword at his hip, and a small, white-haired girl with a stoic expression. But it was the creatures they faced that held Naruto's attention. They were monstrous, twisted parodies of the human form. One had the head of a bull and the body of a man, its eyes burning with a malevolent red light. Another was a grotesque amalgamation of limbs, its body a writhing mass of flesh and bone. There were a half-dozen of them, and they radiated an aura of pure, undiluted malice. The crimson-haired woman spoke, her voice calm but laced with an undercurrent of authority. You have trespassed on the territory of the Grimoire clan. For that, you will pay the price. The bull-headed creature laughed, a harsh, grating sound that scraped at the nerves. Gremory, we are not bound by the old rules. We are free, and we will take what we want. It lunged, its movements unnaturally fast, its claws extended. The blond man moved to intercept it, his sword a blur of silver in the dim light. But Naruto was already in motion. He had no context, no understanding of who these people were or what this conflict was about. But he knew the look of a predator, and he knew the scent of innocent blood. He appeared between the charging monster and the crimson-haired woman in a flicker of movement so fast it was almost imperceptible. He didn't draw a kunai, didn't weave a single hand sign. He simply met the creature's charge with a raised palm, his body a bastion of calm in the swirling chaos. The impact was not the thunderous crash everyone expected. There was only a soft, dull thud, like a fist hitting a sandbag. The bull-headed creature, its momentum completely arrested, looked down in confusion at the hand pressed against its chest. It was a study in contrasts, the massive, brutish form of the monster against the deceptively slender frame of the newcomer. Who are you? The creature stammered, its malevolent confidence evaporating in the face of this silent, immovable obstacle. Naruto didn't answer, he simply tightened his grip, and with a surge of chakra, sent the creature flying backward. It tumbled through the air, a broken puppet, and crashed into the far wall with a sickening crunch of bone and brick. It did not get up. A stunned silence fell over the warehouse. The remaining monsters froze, their predatory instincts screaming at them that something had gone terribly wrong. The crimson-haired woman and her companions stared, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Did you see that? The blonde swordsman whispered, his voice barely audible. He didn't even seem to move. The raven-haired woman's smile had vanished, replaced by a look of intense curiosity. Her gaze was fixed on Naruto, her eyes narrowed as if trying to dissect him, to understand the nature of the power she was sensing. It was immense, a vast, bottomless ocean of energy that made the magical power of everyone else in the room feel like a shallow pond. Naruto ignored them all. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, his blue eyes sweeping over the remaining monsters. There was no anger in his gaze, no hatred. There was only a quiet, unyielding resolve. I don't know who you are or what this is about, he said, his voice calm and even. Yet it carried an authority that resonated in the cavernous space. But you will not harm anyone else. One of the creatures, a thing with far too many joints and a leering, toothy grin, let out a high-pitched shriek of defiance and lunged at him from the side. Naruto didn't even turn his head. He simply raised a hand, and a sphere of swirling blue energy materialized in his palm, a perfect miniature storm of pure chakra. Rasengan, he said, the word a soft exhalation of breath. He met the creature's charge, shoving the sphere into its midsection. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The Rasengan ground into the creature's flesh, the spiraling energy tearing it apart from the inside out. There was a brief, terrible scream, and then the monster was gone. Its form obliterated by the sheer, unadulterated power of the technique. The remaining strays, their courage shattered, turned to flee. But Naruto was not finished. He moved like a phantom, a blur of orange and black. His movements a symphony of deadly grace. A swift kick to the temple sent one creature crashing to the ground, its neck snapping with an audible crack. A precise chop to the back of another's neck severed its spinal cord, its body collapsing in a boneless heap. In less than 10 seconds, it was over. The warehouse was silent once more, the only sound the ragged breathing of the injured boy on the floor. Naruto stood in the center of the room, the dust settling around him. He hadn't broken a sweat. He hadn't even seemed to exert himself. He turned his gaze to the crimson-haired woman. His expression unreadable. Rias Gremory, for the first time in her life, felt a sense of genuine awe. She was a high-class devil, the heiress to one of the most powerful families in the underworld. She had seen great power, commanded it even. But this was something else entirely. The man before her was a force of nature, an enigma wrapped in a tattered orange and black jacket. She quickly composed herself, her training and breeding taking over. I thank you for your assistance, she said, her voice regaining its customary elegance. You have our gratitude. My name is Rias Gremory. Naruto simply nodded, his eyes drifting to the injured boy. He walked over to him, his movements fluid and silent. He knelt, his hand hovering over the wound. A soft, green glow enveloped his palm, and the grievous injury began to stitch itself closed, the flesh knitting together at a visible rate. The boy, Issei, stared up at him, his face pale with shock and pain. You healed me," he stammered. "Rest," Naruto said, his voice softer now. "You've lost a lot of blood." He stood and turned back to Rias, his gaze direct and unwavering. "Where am I? And what was that?" Rias exchanged a quick glance with her companions. The raven-haired woman, Akeno, stepped forward, her usual playful demeanor replaced by a more subdued curiosity. "You're in Kuo town, in Japan," she said, her voice a silky purr. "And those were stray devils." Naruto's brow furrowed. Devils. The word felt foreign on his tongue. "I was in the Valley of the End. There was a summoning circle." His words led off as he tried to make sense of it all. He had been pulled from his world, from everything he had ever known, and deposited into a conflict he didn't understand. Rias saw the confusion in his eyes, but she also saw the power. The quiet confidence that radiated from him like a physical force. He was an unknown, a variable in a world already teetering on the brink of chaos. But he was also, potentially, a powerful ally. "You are clearly not from around here," she said, her tone a careful mixture of hospitality and caution. "And you are clearly lost. Perhaps you would allow us to offer you a place to stay. At least until you can get your bearings. It is the least we can do to repay you for saving my servant." She gestured to Issei, who was now sitting up, looking at his healed stomach in disbelief. Naruto considered her offer. He was alone, in a world he didn't understand, with no idea how to get back. He had no food, no shelter, no allies. He was powerful, yes, but even he could not survive on power alone. And these people, despite their strange titles and the otherworldly energy they wielded, did not seem to be malevolent. At least, not yet. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. "All right," he said, "I accept your offer. For now." Rias let out a small, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. She had 1,000 questions for this strange, powerful man. Who was he? Where did he come from? What was the nature of his power? But for now, it was enough that he was with them, and not against them. As they helped Issei to his feet and made their way out of the derelict warehouse, Rias couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. The arrival of this golden-haired enigma had shattered the fragile peace of her world. But in the chaos he brought with him, she sensed an opportunity, chance to change the very foundations of the world she knew. The game had changed, and she, Rias Grimori, was now in possession of the most powerful, and most unpredictable, piece on the board. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. A World of Kings and Pawns. The walk from the derelict warehouse was a surreal experience for Naruto. The city hummed with a life he recognized, the distant wail of a siren, the rumble of unseen vehicles. The low thrum of electricity, but it was all subtly wrong. The architecture was different, the language on the signs was a variation he could read but felt alien, and the very air tasted different. Thinner and tinged with the exhaust of technologies he couldn't name. It was like looking at a reflection in a disturbed pond. The image was recognizable, but the details were warped, distorted. Kurama was a low growl in the back of his mind, a coiled spring of tension. "This place is saturated with an energy I do not recognize, Kit. It is not natural. It feels manufactured, like a poorly made copy of the real thing." Naruto agreed. The magical energy he sensed from Rias and her companions was potent, but it lacked the organic, flowing feel of the nature energy he had learned to harness in sage mode. It was sharp, precise, and carried an undercurrent of something else, a strange mix of desire and obligation. Their destination was a stately, almost comically out of place building on what appeared to be a school campus. It was an old, Western-style mansion that looked like it had been plucked from a history book and dropped in the middle of modern Japan. "This is our base of operations," Rias announced, pushing open the heavy wooden doors. "The Occult Research Club." The name sounded ridiculous, but the interior was anything but. A plush red carpet muffled their footsteps. A grand staircase swept upward into the shadows of the second floor. The main room was furnished with expensive-looking couches, a polished mahogany table, and a fireplace that, despite the mild night, had a low, crackling fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. It was a room designed for comfort and quiet conversation, a stark contrast to the bloody scene they had just left. Rias gestured towards one of the velvet couches. Please, make yourself comfortable. Akeno, would you mind? Of course, President, the raven-haired woman, Akeno, said with a graceful bow, her smile returning, tinged with a new, deeper curiosity. She disappeared through a side door, presumably to a kitchen. The blonde swordsman, Hiba, stood near the fireplace, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp, never straying far from Naruto. The small, white-haired girl, Kaneko, had already curled up in an oversized armchair, a chocolate bar appearing as if from nowhere in her hand. She watched Naruto with unnervingly still, golden eyes. Issei, the boy whose life he had just saved, collapsed onto the couch opposite Naruto, looking overwhelmed by the night's events. Rias sat down, her crimson hair fanning out around her. She crossed her legs, the picture of aristocratic grace, but Naruto could see the calculating intelligence in her emerald eyes. She was a leader, used to being in control, and his sudden, violent appearance had thrown a wrench into her carefully laid plans. Let's start with proper introductions, she began, her tone formal but not unkind. I am Rias Gramori. This is my queen, Akeno Himahima. She gestured to the returning Akeno, who was carrying a tray with a steaming teapot and several delicate cups. My knight, Hiba Yuto. Hiba gave a slight, courteous nod. My rook, Kaneko Tuju. Kaneko simply stared, taking another small bite of her chocolate. And my newest pawn, Issei Hyodo. Issei jolted, looking flustered. Yeah, that's me. Thanks again for, saving me and all. Naruto accepted the cup of tea Akeno offered. The scent was fragrant, calming. He took a sip, the warmth spreading through him. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. He kept it simple, explaining his clan, his village. His title as Hokage, it would be meaningless here. Uzumaki. Rias tested the name on her tongue. I don't recognize it. Are you from one of the smaller human magical families? Something like that, Naruto replied, his voice deliberately vague. You said you were devils. And those things were stray devils. You also called these people your queen, knight, rook, and pawn. It sounds like you're playing a game. Rias's lips curved into a small smile. She appreciated his directness. In a way, we are. The great war between the devils, the angels, and the fallen angels decimated our populations. We were on the brink of extinction. To replenish our numbers, our leaders created the evil pieces. She held up her hand, and a red, chess piece-shaped object materialized in her palm. Glowing with a soft inner light, a high-class devil, a king, is granted a set of 15 pieces, 1 queen, 2 knights, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, and 8 pawns. We can use these to reincarnate other beings, humans, yokai, even angels, in rare cases, into devils, making them servants in our peerage. They gain demonic power, extended life, and the protection of their master. In return, they serve us. So Issei is your servant now because he was dying? Naruto asked, his gaze shifting to the brown-haired boy. Issei nodded glumly. Yeah, I was killed by a fallen angel. Resident Rias found me and brought me back. The concept was jarring. Reincarnation as a tool for recruitment, for building an army. It was a far cry from the will of fire, where shinobi chose to lay down their lives for their village. For their comrades. This felt transactional. Why were those strays attacking you? Naruto pressed, cutting to the heart of the matter. This town, Kuo, is the territory of the Gramori and Citri families. Kiba spoke up, his voice smooth and even. Any devil operating here without our permission is considered a stray, a rogue element to be eliminated. They grow more brazen, hunting humans for sustenance or simply for sport. We protect this territory. We protect the humans. Naruto finished for him, a flicker of understanding dawning in his eyes. It was a twisted, unfamiliar version of his own life's work. Protecting the innocent from those who would prey on them. Exactly, Rias confirmed. Which brings us to you, Naruto Uzumaki. The power you display. It's unlike anything I have ever seen. It is not demonic power, nor is it the holy power of angels or the light-based power of the fallen. What is it? All eyes were on him. Akeno leaned forward, her smile widening with intrigue. Hiba's hand rested on the pommel of his sword. Kaneko had stopped eating. Naruto took another slow sip of his tea, gathering his thoughts. The truth was too complex, too unbelievable. "It's my life force," he said, choosing a term that was both true and misleading. "I call it chakra." Akeno giggled, a sound like tinkling bells. "Chakra. That's a lovely name. And the way you healed Ise-kun. That was chakra too, a technique using that same energy." "Yes," he confirmed. Rias leaned back, her fingers drumming on the arm of the couch. He was an enigma, and she as a woman who despised puzzles she couldn't solve. "You are incredibly powerful. I can sense it. The sheer volume of your energy, it dwarfs anyone I've ever met. And yet, you are human." She stated it as a fact, not a question. "I am," Naruto said simply. The tension in the room thickened. A human with that much power was an anomaly, a disruption to the established order of things. It made him a prize, and a threat. Hiba took a step forward, his expression polite but his intent clear. "President, if I may. Words can only describe so much. A practical demonstration might be more illuminating." Rias nodded slowly. "A light spar. Hiba, do not be reckless." "Of course," Hiba said, his friendly smile locking into place as he turned to Naruto. "Would you be willing, Naruto-san? I would like to gauge the speed I witnessed earlier." Naruto looked at the blonde swordsman. He saw no malice in him, only a warrior's curiosity and a knight's duty to assess a potential threat to his king. He placed his teacup down and stood. "All right, but let's take it outside. I'd rather not break your furniture." They moved to the large, manicured lawn behind the club building. The moon was high and bright, casting the grounds in a silvery light. The air was cool and crisp. Hiba stood opposite Naruto, about 20 yards away. "I specialize in speed," he said, his hand on his sword. "Try to keep up." In the next instant, he vanished. To a normal human eye, he would have simply disappeared. To Ise, he was a faint blur. To Rias and Akeno, he was a streak of motion. To Naruto, he was moving in slow motion. He didn't need to tap into Kurama's power. He didn't even need to fully enter Sage mode. He just let the natural energy of the world flow into him, sharpening his senses to a razor's edge. The world snapped into perfect clarity. He could feel the whisper of the wind, the vibrations of a worm burrowing deep underground, and the precise trajectory of Kiba's blade as it arced towards his neck. Without turning his head, Naruto took a single, casual step to the side. The sword sliced through the air where he had been a fraction of a second before. Kiba's eyes widened in surprise. He corrected his stance, his movements impossibly fast, and launched into a furious barrage of thrusts and slashes, his blade a web of silver light. Naruto didn't draw a weapon. He didn't even raise his hands to block. He simply moved, his feet gliding over the grass in an effortless, flowing dance. Each step was minimal, precise, just enough to evade the deadly edge of the blade. He weaved and ducked, his body a phantom that Kiba's sword could never quite touch. It was the ultimate expression of economy of motion. "Impossible," Kiba breathed, his flurry of attacks intensifying. He was pushing his demonic speed to its absolute limit. Yet he felt like a child chasing a butterfly. From the sidelines, Rias and Akeno watched in stunned silence. Kiba was their knight, a piece defined by his incredible speed. No one they had ever faced could match him in a contest of pure velocity. Yet this stranger, this, Naruto, was not just matching him, he was making him look foolish, and he was doing it without a single offensive move. "He's not even trying," Kaneko stated flatly, her voice devoid of emotion, though her golden eyes were wide. Kiba, growing desperate, disengaged and leapt back. "Then try this." Sword birth. He slammed his hand on the ground. The earth erupted as dozens, then hundreds, of swords of every shape and size burst from the turf, their points all aimed at Naruto. They shot forward, a tidal wave of sharpened steel intent on impaling him. Naruto stood his ground. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He could feel every single blade, its speed, its angle, its path. He moved. It was no longer a simple evasion. He flowed through the storm of swords, his hands now a blur. He deflected one with the back of his knuckles, spun to let another fly past his ear, and caught a third between two fingers. The enchanted metal screeching in protest. He moved through the deadly barrage as if it were a gentle spring rain. when the last sword had shot past him and embedded itself in a tree trunk. Naruto stood in the center of the lawn, untouched. In his hand, he held the sword he had caught, balancing it perfectly on his index finger. He tossed the sword. It flipped end over end and landed point first in the ground at Kiba's feet, quivering. Kiba stared at the sword, then at Naruto, his chest heaving, sweat beading on his brow. He was not just defeated, he had been utterly, effortlessly dominated. He sheathed his own sword and gave a respectful bow. I am no match for you. Thank you for the lesson. Naruto simply nodded. He had made his point. As he turned back towards the clubhouse, the atmosphere of the world suddenly changed. It was not a sound or a sight, but a feeling. A pressure. The air grew thick, heavy, as if the sky itself was pressing down on them. The cheerful chirping of crickets ceased. A profound, absolute silence fell over the grounds, a silence so deep it felt like a physical weight against their eardrums. Even Kurama went deathly still within him. Kid, what is this? This pressure. It feels ancient, infinite. A figure stood in the shadows beneath the boughs of a large oak tree at the edge of the lawn. It was a small girl, dressed in a black Gothic Lolita dress. She had long, dark hair and eyes that were completely, utterly empty. They were voids, pools of black nothingness that seemed to absorb the moonlight. The pressure emanated from her. It was a passive aura of such immense, overwhelming power that it made Naruto's earlier display against Kiba seem like a child's game. Rias and her peerage were frozen solid, their faces pale with a primal fear. Akeno's smile was gone, replaced by a mask of sheer terror. Kiba had his hand on his sword, but his knuckles were white, his body refusing to obey his command to draw it. Kaneko had dropped her chocolate bar. Naruto was the only one who could move, though he felt the oppressive weight trying to crush him. This was a being on a completely different level. Her power wasn't vast like his or Kurama's. It was infinite. It had no beginning and no end. The girl took a small step out of the shadows, her vacant eyes fixed solely on Naruto. She ignored the devils completely, as if they were nothing more than ants on the pavement. You, she said, her voice a soft, monotone whisper that was somehow audible to everyone despite the crushing silence. You are loud, but you are also quiet. She tilted her head, a gesture that was almost childlike, yet utterly terrifying in its context. You do not belong here. Your existence is a paradox. It is noisy, but the being inside you, the great, ancient one, it yearns for silence. For the stillness that I seek. Naruto stood his ground, his hand unconsciously drifting towards the seal on his stomach. This girl was not just sensing him, she was seeing right through him. Into the cage that held the nine-tailed fox. Who are you? Naruto asked, his own voice steady, a rock in the sea of suffocating pressure. The girl's empty eyes blinked slowly. I am Ophis. I am the Ouroboros dragon. I am the infinite. She took another step, her gaze never leaving him. You interest me, Naruto Uzumaki. The clash of your existence and the silence within you. It is new. I do not like things that are noisy. But your brand of noise, it might be the key to the silence I desire. And then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. The pressure vanished, the air rushed back in, and the crickets resumed their song as if nothing had happened. Rias Grimori stumbled, catching herself on Akeno's arm. Kiba let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, his entire body trembling. Issei had fallen to his knees, gasping for air. They all stared at the empty space where the infinite dragon god had stood, and then their eyes, filled with an profound mixture of terror and awe, turned to Naruto. He was no longer just a powerful, mysterious stranger. He was a beacon, a lightning rod that had, on his very first night in their world, attracted the attention of one of its most powerful and feared primordial beings. Rias looked at him, her mind racing. Her initial plan to perhaps recruit him, to offer him a place in her peerage, now seemed laughably naive. You didn't offer a pawn to a being that could command the attention of the infinite. No, her objective had changed. She had to understand him. She had to ally with him. She had to ensure that whatever chaos he was destined to bring to their world, he brought it while standing on her side. Naruto Uzumaki, she said, her voice barely a whisper, just what in the world are you? Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. the Alliance and the Holy Swords. Naruto awoke to the unfamiliar sensation of soft sunlight filtering through sheer curtains, painting stripes of gold across a high, ornate ceiling. He was lying on a bed that was ridiculously plush, sinking into a mattress softer than any he had ever known. For a moment, a disoriented haze clouded his mind. He was not in his simple apartment in Konoha. He was not camping in the wilds of the Land of Fire. The scent in the air was of lemon polish and old paper, not ramen and training dust. Then, the memories of the previous night ashed down on him with the force of a tidal wave. The summoning circle, the crimson-haired devil named Rias, the battle with the strays, the effortless spar with the swordsman Kiba, and finally, the girl. Ophis. The infinite. She was not an exaggeration. Kurama's voice rumbled in his mind, the fox's usual bravado replaced by grim sobriety. Kit, in all my long years, I have felt power that could shatter mountains, boil seas, and split the sky. But that was different. It was not a measure of power. It was a state of being. Like gravity, or time. It simply is. Naruto sat up, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. The room he was in was a guest bedroom, lavishly appointed with antique furniture and oil paintings. His own tattered jacket and pants were folded neatly on a chair, shed and mended with a skill that bordered on magical. She saw you, Kurama, Naruto murmured, his voice a low whisper. She looked right past me and saw you. She did more than see me. She felt the conflict. Your will, which is a maelstrom of life and determination, bound to my chakra, which is an echo of the Jubi's raw, destructive power. She called you noisy, and me silent. She's looking for a way to achieve absolute stillness. And she thinks we might be the key. A key to be used, or a lock to be broken. Naruto mused, standing and stretching, his muscles coiling with latent energy. A brief encounter had left him feeling more exposed than any battle ever had. It was one thing to be targeted for your strength, it was another to be targeted for the very nature of your existence. He made his way downstairs, following the scent of brewing tea and the low murmur of voices. He found the Grimoire peerage gathered in the main room, the same place they had convened the night before. The atmosphere, however, was vastly different. The casual air was gone, replaced by a palpable tension. Maps were spread across the mahogany table, and Rias stood before them, her expression stern and focused. She looked up as he entered, her emerald eyes meeting his. Good morning, Naruto. I hope you slept well. Well enough, he replied, his gaze sweeping over the others. Akeno offered him a warm smile, though it seemed a bit strained. Kiba nodded in greeting, his hand never far from his sword. Kaneko was nibbling on a yokon, her golden eyes watchful. Issei, looking like he hadn't slept at all, just stared at him with wide, awe-filled eyes. We need to talk, Rias said, her tone leaving no room for argument. She gestured to the chair at the head of the table. What happened last night with Ophis has changed everything. Naruto took the offered seat as Akeno poured him a cup of tea. He listened, his fingers steepled before him, as Rias laid out the precarious state of her world. She spoke of the Great War, a catastrophic conflict that had left all three major factions, the devils, the angels in heaven, and the fallen angels of the Grigori, shattered and weakened. She described fragile truce that now held them in a cold war, a peace born not of goodwill, but of mutual exhaustion and the fear of annihilation. The balance is everything, Rias explained, her voice tight with conviction. Any major shift in power could plunge us back into a war that none of us would survive. And Ophis, and her Chaos Brigade, exist for the sole purpose of shattering that balance. The Chaos Brigade, Naruto asked, the name sounding appropriately ominous. Ophis's personal army, Kiba supplied, his expression grim. A collection of the worst terrorists, monsters, and even gods from Ious mythologies who have been cast out or simply desire chaos. They follow her because of her immense power, and she uses them to cause disruptions, hoping to weaken the factions and find a way to achieve her goal. Which is what? Silence, Akeno said, her voice a soft whisper. The dimensional gap, the space between worlds, is her birthplace and her home. It is supposed to be a place of perfect nothingness. But it is currently occupied by another dragon, the true Red Dragon God Emperor, Great Red. He is a being of dreams, of illusion, and his very presence fills the gap with, well, with himself. It is a source of infinite noise to her. She wants to remove him so she can have her home back. So she can be alone in the silence. It was a motive so alien, so far beyond human concepts of greed or power, that it was utterly terrifying. She didn't want to rule the world. She wanted to unmake the parts of it that annoyed her. Her interest in you is unprecedented, Rias continued, her gaze intense. She has never shown a personal interest in anyone before. Now, you are on her radar. Which means you are a primary target for the Chaos Brigade. They will come for you. They will try to capture you, to dissect you, to use you as a tool to please their master. At the same time, your appearance in Ophis's visit will not have gone unnoticed by the other factions. Heaven and the Grigori will send agents to investigate. You are, whether you like it or not, the new center of the storm. Naruto processed this, his mind calm and clear. He was a stranger in a foreign land, hunted by a godlike being and her army of monsters. And now he was about to become entangled in the politics of angels and fallen angels. In some ways, it felt strangely familiar. His entire life had been a series of escalating conflicts, of being targeted for the power he held. You have two choices, Rias said, laying her cards on the table. You can face this alone, an unknown entity in a world that will see you as either a threat to be eliminated or a prize to be claimed. Or, you can stand with us. Form an alliance with the House of Grimoire. We will offer you our knowledge, our resources, our protection. We will help you understand this world. And if there is a way to send you back to your own, we will help you find it. In return, we ask for your strength. Stand with us, Naruto. Be our ally. It was a shrewd move. She was no longer offering him servitude as a pawn, but a partnership as an equal. She recognized his power was too great to be commanded, so she sought to bind it to her through loyalty and mutual interest. Naruto looked around the table. He saw the genuine concern in Issei's eyes, the warrior's respect in Kiba's, the deep curiosity in Akeno's, and the silent acceptance in Kaniko's. And in Rias, he saw a leader. A young, perhaps inexperienced one, but a true leader who cared for her people and was willing to take a massive risk for a chance at survival. They were a strange, mismatched family, not unlike his own Team 7 had been. All right, Naruto said, his voice ringing with quiet finality. I'll be your ally. A collective sigh of relief went through the room. Rias's shoulders, which had been tense with anticipation, relaxed. A genuine smile touched her lips. Thank you, Naruto. You won't regret this. So, what's the first move? He asked, getting straight to the point. Before Rias could answer, the entire building seemed to hum with a strange energy. It was different from the demonic power of the Grimoire peerage. This was sharp, bright, and felt holy. It was like the sting of antiseptic on a wound. Kiba was instantly on his feet, his hand on his sword. Outside, two of them, their power fields, consecrated. They moved to the main entrance, Naruto at the forefront with Rias. Standing on the walkway leading to the clubhouse were two young women. One had vibrant blue hair cut in a short, practical style and sharp, golden eyes. She wore a form-fitting combat outfit and carried a massive sword wrapped in white cloth on her back. Her expression was one of stern, unyielding focus. The other girl had long, light brown hair tied in twin tails and a much gentler demeanor. She wore a similar outfit and carried a smaller, though no less impressive, sword at her hip. She seemed more curious than hostile, her eyes wide as she took in the group of devils before her. Devils of the Grimoire household, the blue-haired woman said, her voice clear and strong, devoid of any pleasantries. I am Xenovia Quarta. This is Irina Shido. We are here on behalf of the church. The church, Rias replied, her tone cool and aristocratic. You are a long way from the Vatican. What business do you have in territory governed by devils? Xenovia's gaze was uncompromising. Our business is with holy artifacts. 3 of the stolen Excalibur fragments have been traced to this town. We are here to retrieve them. We trust you will not interfere with our sacred mission. Her eyes then shifted, sweeping past Rias and locking onto Naruto. Her stern expression faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of confusion. The energy signature from this man was bizarre. It was immense, a raging bonfire of power, yet it felt completely natural, organic. It was not demonic, nor was it holy. It was something else entirely. "And who are you?" she demanded, her hand tightening on the hilt of her sheathed sword. "You are no devil. My name is Naruto Uzumaki," he replied calmly. "And I'm an ally of Rias Grimori." Xenovia's eyes narrowed. "An ally? A human aligned with devils? You have chosen your side poorly." "I choose my friends based on their actions, not their labels," Naruto stated simply, his words carrying an unshakable conviction. Irina, the brown-haired girl, stepped forward, a nervous but friendly smile on her face. Now, Xenovia, let's not be hasty. We're just here to retrieve the swords. As long as you all don't get in our way, there doesn't have to be any trouble." She then looked at Issei, and her eyes went wide with recognition. "Issei-kun, is that you?" Issei sputtered, his face turning beet red. "Irina, you two know each other?" Rias asked, an eyebrow raised. "We were childhood friends," Irina chirped. "I can't believe it. But, Issei-kun, your energy, you're a devil." Her cheerful demeanor evaporated, replaced by a look of profound sadness and pity. "Oh, you poor, fallen soul." Xenovia ignored the reunion. Her focus was entirely on the strategic situation. "Our mission is to retrieve the Excaliburs from the fallen angel who stole them, Kokobile. However, your presence here complicates matters. The church cannot abide a human of your power siding with our enemies." "We are not your enemies," Rias countered, her voice sharp. "We are in a truce." "A truce you devils have broken time and again," Xenovia shot back. "We will complete our mission. If you stand in our way, we will cut you down. That includes your human pet." The insult was clear, but Naruto remained unfazed. He simply looked at the massive sword on her back. "That's a big sword. Are you sure you know how to use it?" A vein pulsed in Xenovia's temple. "This is Durandal, a holy sword of immense power. And this," she gestured to the cloth-wrapped weapon, "is a piece of the legendary Excalibur itself. Do not mock what you do not understand." "I'm not mocking it," Naruto said, his tone perfectly even. "I'm just saying, a weapon is only as good as its wielder." The challenge was unspoken, but it hung in the air, thick and heavy. Xenovia's hand trembled with the urge to draw her blade and strike this insolent human down. The sheer arrogance, the absolute calm he projected in the face of two holy sword wielders, was infuriating. "We will be staying in this town until our mission is complete," Xenovia declared, reining in her temper. "This is your only warning. Stay out of our way." With a final, lingering glare at Naruto, she turned, her companion Irina giving Issei one last sorrowful look before following. They walked away, their holy energy signatures receding into the distance. The moment they were gone, Issei slumped against the doorframe. "Kokobile, isn't he one of the leaders of the fallen angels?" "A cadre leader, yes," Kiba said grimly. "And a warmonger who was known to despise the current truce. If he is here, with 3 Excalibur fragments, he is planning to start a war." Rias turned to Naruto, her expression graver than ever before. "It seems our alliance is to be tested sooner than I thought. A war between the 3 factions. Started here in our town. We cannot allow that to happen." Naruto looked in the direction the 2 swordswomen had gone. He hadn't just entered a new world. He had been dropped into a powder keg with a lit fuse. Caught between devils, angels, fallen angels, and an infinite dragon. He felt a grin spread across his face, the first genuine, thrill-seeking grin he'd had since arriving. "Well," he said, cracking his knuckles. "This should be interesting." Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. Echoes of a Forged Blade. The air in the Occult Research Club was thick with the scent of old paper and brewing tension. The maps Rias had been studying earlier were now the centerpiece of a council of war. She stood at the head of the table, a crimson-haired general marshalling her forces, her finger tracing the layout of Kuo Town. "Kokobile is a master of misdirection," she stated, her voice sharp and clear. "He won't make his base in an obvious location. He will hide in plain sight, somewhere we would overlook. The Excalibur fragments amplify holy power, but they can also be used to mask it if handled correctly. So we're looking for a needle in a haystack, and the needle can make itself look like a piece of hay," Issei grumbled. Slumping in his chair, the events of the past 48 hours had been a brutal crash course in a world he never knew existed. He felt like a liability, a piece of luggage that had to be saved at every turn. He glanced at Naruto, who was leaning back in his chair, eyes closed, seemingly half asleep. Yet Issei knew, with an instinct he couldn't explain, that blonde shinobi was taking in every single word. He's right, Naruto said, his eyes still closed. You're thinking like devils, looking for demonic energy signatures or places of power. This Kokobile is a fallen angel. He deals in deception. You're not looking for a place that feels wrong. You're looking for a place that feels too right. Akeno, who had been quietly observing, tilted her head. Too right. What do you mean, Naruto-kun? Quote. Naruto opened his eyes, the blue in them startlingly clear and focused. A perfect blind spot. A place with no energy signature at all. A void. It takes a massive amount of power and control to create a perfect null zone. It would be his fortress and his camouflage. Stop searching for his presence. Start searching for his absence. The simple, profound shift in perspective hung in the air. Rias stared at Naruto, a slow smile of appreciation spreading across her face. It was brilliant. It was the kind of outside-the-box thinking that won wars. Akeno, Kiba, refocus your search. Use the ley lines of the town not to find a concentration of power, but a hole in the network. A place where the natural energy of the world is being smothered. Right away, President, Kiba said, already pulling out a more detailed map of the town's mystical geography. Issei watched the exchange, a familiar knot of inadequacy tightening in his gut. Everyone had a role. Rias was the commander, Akeno her spymaster, Kiba the swift knight, Kaneko the unshakable shield. Naruto was the grandmaster who saw the whole board. And what was he? The pawn who had almost gotten captured on the first move. He stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. Naruto-san, he said, his voice a little too loud. Naruto turned his calm gaze on him. What is it, Issei? Train me, he blurted out. His fists clenched. I can't just sit here while everyone else is fighting. I have this sacred gear. He held up his left arm, where the red gauntlet of the boosted gear pulsed with a faint light. But I don't know how to use it. You took down all those strays without breaking a sweat. You made Kiba-senpai look like he was standing still. Please, teach me how to be strong enough to protect my friends. The desperation in his voice was raw, genuine. Naruto looked at him, and for a moment, he saw a reflection of himself. A young boy, desperate for recognition, desperate to prove his worth. He gave a slow nod. All right, he said, meet me out back. Kiba, Kaneko, you two can come as well. A warrior should never stop honing their fundamentals. A few minutes later, Naruto stood before the three of them on the lawn behind the clubhouse. Kiba was curious, eager to learn what he could from the man who had so effortlessly bested him. Kaneko stood impassively, a bag of chips in her hand. But her golden eyes were fixed on Naruto with an unwavering intensity. Power is not just about how hard you can hit, Naruto began, his tone shifting from casual ally to seasoned sensei. It's about control, efficiency. A raging inferno can be scattered by a gust of wind, but a single, focused flame can burn through steel. Your demonic power, Issei's sacred gear, it's all just raw energy. Without control, it's useless. He plucked a leaf from a nearby bush. Issei, your sacred gear boosts your power. But what good is a river that floods its banks every time it rains? You need to learn to channel it. To feel it. He placed the leaf on Issei's forehead. Forget your gauntlet. Forget boosting. I want you to focus all of your energy, your will, everything you are, into this single point. Hold this leaf to your head using only that energy. Issei stared at him, bewildered. With energy. How am I supposed to do that? Don't think. Feel, Naruto instructed. Feel the connection between your mind and your body. Feel the power that sleeps in your soul. Now, command it. Issei closed his eyes, his face scrunched in concentration. The leaf promptly fell off. He tried again. It fell again. He flushed with embarrassment, especially with Kiba and Kaneko watching. This is stupid, he muttered. How is this going to help me fight? This is everything, Naruto said, his voice sharp, cutting through Issei's frustration. If you can't control your power enough to perform a simple task like this, how can you expect to control it in the heat of battle? When your life is on the line, when your friends' lives are on the line, He picked up the leaf and placed it on his own forehead. It stuck there as if glued. This is chakra control. It is the foundation of everything I do. He then walked over to a tree. Still with the leaf on his forehead. He placed his hand on the trunk and did the same thing, channeling his energy into his palm. He took his hand away, and the leaf was now stuck to the tree bark. Focus, will, control. Something clicked in Issei's mind. It wasn't about brute force. It was about precision. He took a deep breath, picked up the leaf, and tried again. He ignored everything else, focusing only on the feel of the leaf against his skin and the well of power deep inside him. He imagined that power as a fine thread, extending from his core and anchoring the leaf in place. The leaf trembled, and held. For a full second. Then it fell, but Issei's eyes flew open, a grin spreading across his face. I did it. I felt it. Good, Naruto said with an approving nod. Now do it again, and again, until it becomes as natural as breathing. He turned to Kiba and Kaneko. The same applies to you. Your demonic power is an extension of yourselves. Practice manipulating it in small, precise ways. Create a tiny ball of light in your palm. Make it spin. Make it change shape. Master the small things, and the big things will follow. He watched them for a moment. The three of them engrossed in their new, seemingly mundane training. He was not just teaching them a skill, he was teaching them a philosophy. A ninja's philosophy. While the training session was underway, Rias and Akeno were in the club's library, a vast, two-story room filled with ancient demonic texts. A massive, intricate map of the town's ley lines was suspended in the air between them, glowing with a soft, magical light. Naruto was right, Akeno murmured, her fingers tracing a path on the ethereal map. We were looking for spikes in energy. But when you look for the ophis, her finger stopped at the very center of the map. There, a perfect circle, Huo Academy. Rias stared at the location. It's a complete void. There's no demonic energy, no holy energy, not even the natural ambient energy of the area. It's silent. He's hiding right under our noses, Akeno said, a dangerous glint in her eyes. In the one place we are sworn to protect. The school is filled with humans. He's using them as a shield. And as a potential sacrifice, Rias added, her expression hardening. To start a war on that scale, he would need a catalyst. A massive release of soul energy. A horrified realization dawned on her. He's going to kill the students. The walk back from the secluded training ground was quiet. Issei was still trying to stick the leaf to his hand as he walked, his concentration absolute. Naruto walked beside him, a comfortable silence between them. They rounded a corner onto a main street just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. And ran straight into a fight. Xenovia Quarta was a whirlwind of blue and silver, her massive holy sword, Durandal, cleaving through the air with ferocious power. She was fighting a man in a priest's cassock. His face twisted in a fanatical grin. In his hands, he held a sword that shimmered with a fractured, unstable light, a counterfeit Excalibur. But he wasn't alone. Several other figures in robes were with him, creating magical barriers that hampered Xenovia's movements, forcing her into a defensive position. Irina was trying to provide support, but she was pinned down, her own Excalibur fragment, Mimic, struggling to hold back a barrage of light spears. Xenovia was powerful, but she was a straightforward fighter. Her opponent was a trickster, using the warped space Bendon G-power of his false Excalibur to teleport short distances, opening small portals to redirect her own attacks back at her. She swung Durandal in a wide arc meant to cleave him in two, only for a portal to open in front of her. The tip of her own blade emerged from another portal right beside her head. She was forced to throw herself to the ground, the attack grazing her cheek. Your faith is strong, wielder of Durandal. The priest cackled, but your tactics are crude. You fight with the fury of a wild beast, not the grace of a holy warrior. Before he could press his advantage, a blur of orange and black shot past Xenovia. Naruto hadn't waited for an invitation. He saw people in trouble, and he acted. He didn't engage the priest directly. Instead, he threw a single, three-pronged kunai. It wasn't aimed at the priest, but at the wall of a building far behind him. The priest laughed. What is that? A child's toy? Naruto didn't answer. He formed a hand seal, and a ball of swirling blue energy appeared in his palm. Rasengan. Quote. He charged, not at the priest, but at one of the robed figures holding the barrier. The priest, seeing the raw power in the sphere, prepared to intercept him. And in that moment, he took his eyes off the kunai. In a flash of yellow light, Naruto vanished. He reappeared instantly, his hand grabbing the kunai he had thrown to the wall. The Flying Thunder God technique. He was now behind the entire enemy formation. The robed figures whirled around in shock, their concentration on the barrier wavering. That was all the opening Xenovia needed. With a roar, he shattered the weakened barrier with a powerful slash of Durandal. At the same time, Naruto slammed his Rasengan into the back of the lead priest. The effect was devastating. The swirling chakra tore through the priest's defenses, sending him flying into a wall with a sickening crunch. He collapsed in a heap, the counterfeit Excalibur clattering to the pavement. With their leader down and their formation broken, the remaining robed figures hesitated. That hesitation was fatal. 2 shadow clones of Naruto burst into existence, dispatching the remaining figures with swift, precise strikes to the back of the neck. The entire fight, which had been a deadly struggle for Xenovia and Irina, was over in less than 10 seconds. Silence descended on the street. Irina stared with wide, star-struck eyes. Issei, who had just caught up, looked on in awe. Xenovia stood panting, her knuckles white where she gripped Durandal. She looked at the defeated priests, then at Naruto, who was calmly dusting off his hands. He hadn't just saved her. He had analyzed her weakness, created a diversion, and dismantled the entire enemy strategy with a single, perfectly executed maneuver. He had used tactics, not just brute force. She started, her voice a mixture of anger and grudging respect. I did not require your assistance. Looked like it from where I was standing, Naruto replied evenly, walkin' over and nudging the fallen priest with his foot. He was unconscious, but alive. He was right, you have a lot of power, but you charge straight ahead. You need to learn to see the whole battlefield. His words, a simple statement of fact, hit Xenovia harder than any physical blow. It was the same weakness her instructors had always pointed out. Her pride and her righteous fury often blinded her to more subtle strategies. And this stranger, this human allied with devils, had seen it in a matter of seconds. Irina rushed over, her face beaming. That was amazing. You were like, swoosh, and then, bam. Thank you so much for helping us. Naruto gave her a small smile. He turned his attention back to Xenovia, his expression serious. This man is one of Kokobeel's followers. He is here, in this town, planning something big. We're all after the same thing, stopping him. Just then, Naruto's ear twitched. A small, bat-like creature, a familiar of Rias's, fluttered down and whispered something only he could hear. His face grew grim. My friends found him, he said, his voice low and dangerous. He's at Kuo Academy, and his plan isn't just to start a war. He's planning to destroy this entire town, starting with everyone in that school. The weight of his words settled on them all. Xenovia's pride, Irina's cheerfulness, Issei's awe, it all vanished, replaced by a single, chilling realization. This was no longer about retrieving holy swords or jurisdictional disputes. A madman was about to commit mass murder, and they were the only ones standing in his way. They were no longer devils, humans, and exorcists. They were just the last line of defense. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The War Lover on Hallowed Ground. The dying sunlight bled across the pavement, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to claw at the edges of the city. Xenovia's proud, defiant face was pale in the twilight, the absolute certainty in her eyes fractured by Naruto's grim pronouncement. Destroy the town, starting with the school. The words hung between them, a death sentence for thousands of innocent souls. That's impossible, Irina stammered, her cheerful demeanor finally shattering completely. Kokobeel is a leader of the Grigori. Even if he wants war, he wouldn't commit such a pointless slaughter. Men who crave war don't need a point, Naruto said, his voice flat and hard. They just need a spark. A big one. He turned his gaze from the exorcists to Issei, who looked like he was about to be sick. Get ready. We're moving. Before anyone could protest or ask for a plan, the air shimmered behind Naruto. In a swirl of crimson energy, Rias, Akeno, Hiba, and Kaneko materialized, stepping through a magical transportation circle. Rias's face was a mask of cold fury. "Naruto is right," she announced, her voice leaving no room for doubt. "We've confirmed it. A massive barrier is being erected around Kuo Academy. It's designed to contain a catastrophic explosion and channel the released life force. He's turning the school into a bomb." The two groups, devils and exorcists, stared at each other. Animosity, centuries of ingrained hatred and mistrust, warred with the stark, terrifying reality of their situation. Xenovia's hand was still clenched around Durandal, her knuckles white. Hiba stood ready, his posture radiating a quiet lethality. "There is no time for jurisdiction or old grudges," Naruto said, stepping into the space between them. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension like a razor. He looked directly at Xenovia, then at Rias. "He is the enemy. Everyone else in this town is a victim. We either work together right now, or we all die and he gets his war. It's that simple." His logic was brutal and irrefutable. Rias gave a sharp, decisive nod. "He is right. For tonight, we are allies. The House of Grimoire will fight alongside the Church." Xenovia gritted her teeth, her pride warring with her duty. To fight alongside devils was a sin, a betrayal of everything she had been taught. But to stand by and allow a servant of God to be slaughtered by a fallen angel was a greater one. Her mission was to retrieve the Excaliburs, and Kokobile had them. Her path, for now, was aligned with the demons before her. "Fine," she clipped out, her voice tight with resentment. "We will cooperate until Kokobile is defeated and the swords are secured. But make no mistake, devils. This is a temporary arrangement. Wouldn't have it any other way," Akeno purred, her smile returning, sharp as a knife's edge. "Good. Glad we're all on the same page," Naruto said, already turning towards the academy. "Let's go." With a nod from Rias, another transportation circle flared to life, enveloping them all. The world dissolved into a crimson blur, and a moment later, they reformed on the street just outside the main gates of Kuo Academy. The sight before them was chilling. The familiar school, a place of youthful energy and mundane routine, was transformed. A dome of shimmering, purple-black energy covered the entire campus, pulsing with a malevolent light. The air crackled, heavy with a power so immense it felt like standing at the bottom of the ocean. Inside the barrier, the world seemed darker, the shadows deeper, the silence absolute. "This is even larger than I feared," Rias murmured, her hand raised as if to touch the impenetrable wall. The power required to sustain this is immense. They found a weak point, a flicker in the barrier's matrix near a side entrance, and slipped through. The moment they were inside, the sounds of the city vanished. They were in a pocket dimension, a stage set for a massacre. In the center of the main courtyard, seated on a throne that seemed to be crafted from pure shadow, was a man. He had long, black hair, a cruel, handsome face, and 10 jet black angel wings that spread out behind him like a macabre halo. This was Kokobile. He was not alone. The priest Naruto had defeated earlier, Fried Selzen, was on his knees before him. His face bruised and swollen. Hovering in the air around the throne were the 3 stolen Excalibur fragments, their holy light twisted and corrupted by the demonic energy of the barrier. "Fried, you useless filth," Kokobile said, his voice a bored, resonant baritone that echoed across the courtyard. He gestured dismissively, and a spear of dark light pierced the priest's shoulder, eliciting a pained scream. "You couldn't even handle 2 little girls from the church and their pet devils." His gaze then lifted, sweeping over the assembled group. He smiled, a slow, predatory curving of his lips. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated joy. "Ah, the main event has arrived. Rias Grimoire, sister of the pathetic demon King Lucifer, and 2 of the church's lapdogs. Welcome to my stage, Kokobile." Rias's voice rang out, filled with fury. "End this madness at once. Your actions will shatter the truce." Kokobile laughed, a deep, booming sound that was utterly devoid of humor. "Shatter the truce, my dear child, that is precisely the point. This pathetic peace is a disease, a rotting corpse of a world where warriors have nothing to do but grow old and weak. I miss the screams, the rending of flesh, the glorious, beautiful music of the Great War." His eyes, burning with a fanatical light, landed on Xenovia and Irina. And you too, fighting for a God who isn't even there to hear your prayers. Did they neglect to tell you in your little catechism classes? God is dead. The God of the Bible was killed in the Great War, along with the original 4 great Satans. Heaven has been running on a system of proxies and lies ever since. The words struck Xenovia like a physical blow. Her face went slack with shock, her mind reeling. Lies? That's impossible. That's blasphemy. Is it? Kokabeel sneered. Why do you think heaven is so desperate for this truce? Why have they not launched a new crusade to wipe us all out? It's because they are empty. A kingdom with no king. You are soldiers in an army that has already lost its commander. Irina was openly weeping, her faith, the very foundation of her existence, crumbling around her. Xenovia stumbled back, her grip on Durandal slackening. Her entire life, her purpose, had been a lie. Kiba stepped forward, his eyes burning with a cold fire. It was you, the Holy Sword Project. You were one of the architects. Kokabeel's gaze shifted to him, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Ah, a survivor. Yes, it was one of my more amusing experiments. Trying to artificially create holy sword wielders. So much screaming. It was a shame the project was deemed a failure and all the subjects had to be disposed of. The casual cruelty, the utter lack of remorse, solidified the resolve of everyone present. This was not a soldier. This was a monster. Enough talk. Kokabeel sighed, looking bored again. Let's begin the festivities. As an opening act, he snapped his fingers. The ground shook. 3 massy, vague magic circles flared to life around him, and from them emerged a beast of nightmare. It was a colossal, 3-headed dog, each head lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth, saliva dripping from its jaws like molten lava. Its eyes burned with hellfire, and a low, guttural growl rumbled from its 3 chests, a sound that promised a violent, painful death. Cerberus, Akeno whispered, her playful demeanor gone, replaced by a grim tension. The Hound of Hell. Now, don't let my pet have all the fun, Kokabeel said, rising from his throne. Let's see what you've got. Before anyone else could react, Naruto moved. He didn't issue a grand challenge. He simply acted. Rias, Akeno, the barrier is the main threat. Find its power source and destroy it. The rest of us will buy you time, he commanded. His voice a calm center in the swirling chaos. Kiba, Xenovia, you're the sword masters. Take the dogs' heads. Irina, provide support from a distance, he continued, his eyes already locked on Kokabeel. Kaneko, protect Rias and Akeno. Don't let anything get near them. Issei, he turned to the terrified boy. You're with Kaneko. Your job is the most important. You are the last line of defense for the spellcasters. Don't you dare let them down. The orders were swift, logical, and absolute. There was no time for argument. Each person had a role, a purpose. Issei, filled with a terrifying sense of responsibility, nodded numbly, his boosted gear flaring to life on his arm. With a battle cry, Kiba and a shaken but furious Xenovia charged Cerberus. Kiba was a blur of silver, his demonic speed allowing him to weave between the beast's massive paws, while Xenovia, her grief and rage fueling her strength, swung Durandal in a wide, powerful arc of holy light. Rias and Akeno flew into the air, their hands glowing with power as they began to analyze the massive barrier, searching for the linchpin holding it together. Kaneko and Issei stood beneath them, back to back, their eyes scanning for any other threats. That left Naruto alone in the center of the courtyard, facing a Kadri-class fallen angel. A human giving orders to devils. Kokabeel chuckled, amused. You have spirit, I'll give you that. Let's see how long it lasts. He flicked his wrist, and a dozen spears of pure light, each one crackling with enough power to vaporize a building, shot towards Naruto. Naruto didn't move to dodge. He simply held up a hand and a single shadow clone appeared in front of him. A swirling sphere of blue energy, far larger and more violent than the one he had used before, appeared in the clone's hand. Wind style. Recentrican. He threw the spinning projectile. It shrieked through the air like 1,000 tiny blades, meeting the light spears head-on. The collision was catastrophic. The Recentrican tore through the holy light, shredding the spears into nothingness before continuing on its path toward Kokabeel. Kokabeel's eyes widened in genuine surprise. He threw himself to Th. E sighed as the spinning disk of death sliced through the air where he had been, carving a deep, permanent scar into the courtyard ground before it finally dissipated in a massive explosion of wind energy. Kokobeel stood up, brushing dust from his coat. The bored amusement was gone from his face, replaced by a look of sharp, predatory interest. That was not a human technique. What are you? Naruto didn't answer. He simply dropped into a low fighting stance. He had Kokobeel's full attention. Phase 1 was complete. Across the courtyard, the fight against Cerberus was a desperate struggle. The beast was unnaturally fast and strong, and its three heads fought with a terrifying coordination. Hiba managed to slice open one of its legs, but the wound was immediately cauterized by hellfire. Xenovia swung Durandal, her faith shattered but her warrior's instinct still strong. Her blow, which should have cleaved one of the heads from its neck, was blocked by a sudden shield of dark energy. Damn it, she roared in frustration. Meanwhile, Rias and Akeno were pouring their energy into the barrier, their faces beaded with sweat. It's too strong, Rias grunted. It's being powered directly by Kokobeel, and by the Excaliburs. We can't break it while he's still channeling power into it. Kokobeel smiled, hearing her cry of frustration. That's right, little Grimori. This stage will not fall till the main actor is done with his performance. He turned his burning gaze back to Naruto. And you, human, have just earned the starring role. He spread his 10 wings, and the demonic power pouring from him intensified tenfold. The very ground began to crack under the pressure. Spears of light, dozens this time, materialized in the air around him, all aimed at Naruto. Naruto stood his ground, a calm, unshakable rock in a raging storm. He knew that the fate of the town, the lives of his new allies, and the prevention of a world-ending war all rested on one simple fact: he had to defeat the monster in front of him. All right then, he whispered to himself, a small, dangerous smile touching his lips as he felt Kurama's vast, fiery chakra begin to stir within him. Let's dance. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Golden Fox and the Fallen Star. The courtyard had become a maelstrom of chaos. Hiba's sword was a silver flash against Cerberus's hide, his speed allowing him to inflict a dozen low cuts that were infuriating but not debilitating. Xenovia, fighting with the desperate fury of a zealot whose god had just been pronounced dead, swung Durandal with enough force to cleave a building in two. But the three-headed beast was preternaturally agile, its movements a blur of black fur and hellfire. High above, Rias and Akeno poured a torrent of demonic energy into the pulsating barrier. Their combined assault causing it to flicker and groan but not break. Every ounce of power they used to attack the shield was an ounce they couldn't use to defend themselves, a fact Kokobeel was keenly aware of. He laughed, a sound of pure, joyous malice, as he watched his pet toy with the devils and exorcists. Yes, struggle, fight, bleed. This is the beauty I have missed for so long. He turned his attention back to Naruto, his grin widening. And you, my mysterious human. You have earned a glorious death. The dozens of light spears he had summoned shot forward, a volley of incandescent death that converged on Naruto's position from all sides. There was no escape, no angle of retreat. Naruto didn't try to retreat. He took a single, deep breath, and closed his eyes. Kurama, let's show him what real power looks like. HMPH. It's about time, the great fox grumbled in his mind, but Naruto could feel the familiar, exhilarating surge of partnership, of shared will. The air around Naruto exploded. It was not a sound, but a presence. A torrent of raw, untamed energy erupted from him, so potent and so vast that it felt like a second sun had ignited in the center of the courtyard. It was a golden, fiery chakra, a life force so vibrant and overwhelming that it physically pushed back the oppressive demonic aura of the barrier. Kokobeel's spears of light, moments from impaling their target, dissolved into harmless motes of dust before they were even halfway there, their holy energy simply unmade by the sheer density of the golden torrent. Everyone froze. Hiba, mid-lunge, stumbled to a halt. Xenovia's swing faltered. High above, Rias and Akeno stopped their assault on the barrier, their mouths agape as they stared at the pillar of golden fire. What is that? Rias breathed, her voice filled with a profound awe that bordered on fear. The power she was sensing was biblical in scale. It was an energy signature on par with her brother, Sears's Lucifer, one of the four great Satans. No, it was more than that. It was wilder, more primal. When the light subsided, Naruto was changed. He was coated in a blazing, translucent aura of golden chakra, shaped like a flickering flame. The whisker marks on his cheeks were thick and pronounced, and his blue eyes glowed with a feral, crimson light. Black markings swirled across his body, forming intricate patterns that culminate in the symbol of the Uzumaki clan on his stomach. He didn't look human anymore. He looked like a myth-given form. A demigod of pure, untamed power. Kokobeel's smile was gone, replaced by a mask of stunned disbelief. What in the name of the absent god are you? Naruto didn't answer with words. He vanished. He reappeared directly in front of Kokobeel, his speed so immense it shattered the sound barrier. The resulting boom echoing across the silent courtyard. Kokobeel's eyes widened, his instincts screaming, but he was too slow. Naruto's punch was not aimed at his face or his chest. It was a simple, straight jab to the stomach. The impact was deceptively quiet, a dull thud. But the force behind it was catastrophic. Kokobeel doubled over, a strangled gasp escaping his lips as the air was driven from his lungs. Golden energy, Naruto's chakra, visibly pulsed through him, short-circuiting his own demonic power. Before the fallen angel could even begin to fall, Naruto was gone again. Reappearing halfway across the courtyard. He hadn't just moved to attack. He was assessing the entire battlefield. Issei, Kaneko, left flank, he commanded, his voice now layered, carrying an echo of Kurama's guttural growl. From the shadows of the school building, two more demonic beasts, lesser chimera summoned by Kokobeel as reinforcements, had been creeping towards Rias and Akeno. Kaneko and Issei, startled by the command, whirled around to see them. Kaneko met the first one's charge with a punch that belied her small frame, the impact shaking the very ground. Issei, his heart pounding with a mixture of terror and adrenaline, heard the voice of his sacred gear. Boost. He poured all the amplified power into his fist, mimicking Kaneko's form, and slammed it into the second beast's face. The creature was thrown back. Stunned, Issei had successfully defended his king. Simultaneously, golden arms made of pure chakra erupted from Naruto's back. Two of them shot towards the embattled sword fighters. One arm wrapped around Cerberus's middle head, yanking it down and exposing its neck. The other chakra arm formed a fist and slammed into the ground right beside the hellhound's feet, creating a shockwave that made the massive beast lose its footing. Now, Naruto's voice boomed. Kiba and Xenovia didn't hesitate. Seizing the opening, Kiba's sword flashed, severing one of the beast's heads in a spray of black ichor. Xenovia, letting out a raw, grief-fueled scream, put all her strength into Durandal, the holy sword glowing with a brilliant white light as she brought it down, Clea. NLY slicing through the neck of the head Naruto's chakra arm was holding. With two of its heads gone, Cerberus let out a final, agonized howl before its body began to dissolve into shadows, its connection to its master severed. All of this, the attack on Kokobeel, the command to Issei and Kaneko, the assist to Kiba and Xenovia, had happened in less than 3 seconds. Naruto stood calmly, his golden aura blazing. As Kokobeel slowly straightened up, clutching his stomach, a trickle of black blood dripping from his lips. The fallen angel's face was a mask of incandescent rage. His pride, his status as a legendary warrior of the Great War, had been shattered by a single blow from an unknown. You dare, he roared, his 10 black wings flaring violently. You dare to lay your filthy human hands on me. He raised his hands to the sky, and a spear of light formed, 100 times larger and more condensed than any before. It was a weapon of mass destruction, a bolt of pure energy that could turn the entire school, and a good portion of the town with it, into a crater. I will erase you from existence. Naruto simply watched the weapon form. He raised one hand, and a small, dense ball of black and purple energy began to form in his palm, spinning with a terrifying velocity. It was the absolute pinnacle of shape manipulation. A perfect balance of positive and negative chakra. A tailed beast bomb. It was small, no larger than a standard Rasengan, but Rias and Akeno could feel the power contained within it. It was a swirling vortex of annihilation, a miniature black hole that threatened to unravel reality itself. You want to talk about power? Naruto's layered voice was cold, dismissive. You're not even in the same league. He didn't throw it, he flicked it. The tiny sphere shot forward, not with a shriek. but in absolute silence. It met Kokobil's massive spear of light, and for a moment, the two forces struggled. The holy light of a fallen angel leader against the condensed power of the nine-tailed fox. It wasn't a contest. The tailed beast bomb devoured the light spear, consuming its energy like a fire-consuming paper. It continued on its path and struck the barrier high above. The resulting explosion was silent but absolute. The purple-black barrier, which had withstood the combined assault of a Grimoire and a Himahima, shattered like glass. A shockwave of pure force, stripped of any sound or heat, rolled across the campus. The sky was visible once more. The sounds of the city returned. The stage was broken. Kokobil stared, his jaw hanging open in utter disbelief. Everything he had built, his entire plan, was undone. But it was the words that followed that truly broke him. "You talk about the glory of war," Naruto said, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. "But you're not a warrior. You're just a bully who misses the days when he could hurt people without consequences. You're lonely, Kokobil, so pathetic and desperate for attention that you'd burn the world down just to make people look at you." Every word was a hammer blow to the fallen angel's pride. He saw it then, in Naruto's glowing red eyes. Not hatred, not anger, just a profound, dismissive pity. That was the ultimate insult. "I'll kill you," Kokobil screamed, his sanity finally snapping. He summoned the 3 Excalibur fragments. They flew to his hand, merging not into a single, elegant blade, but a grotesque, twisted amalgamation of holy power, glowing with a corrupted, feverish light. He poured every last drop of his power into it. "I am Kokabiel, a leader of the Grigori. I will not be mocked by a nobody." He lunged, the monstrous sword held high, ready to cleave Naruto, and reality itself, in two. Naruto met the charge. He didn't form a weapon. He simply pulled back his fist, the golden chakra around it condensing, becoming as solid and real as forged steel. The clash of the corrupted holy sword and the fist of the Jinchuriki was the final, thunderous note in the symphony of battle. For a heart-stopping second, light and gold struggled for dominance. Then, with a sound like 1,000 mirrors shattering at once, the Excalibur amalgamation cracked. The fissures spread, and the holy sword exploded in a shower of useless, fragmented light. Naruto's punch continued unimpeded, striking Kokobil square in the chest. The golden chakra exploded outward, and the fallen angel was launched backward like a stone from a catapult. He tumbled through the air, his wings tattered, his armor shattered, and crashed into the far wall of the school building with enough force to crater the concrete. He slid down, leaving a black smear, and did not move. Silence. The courtyard was a ruin. The ground was scarred. A building was damaged. But everyone was alive. Naruto stood over the fallen angel, his golden aura slowly receding, the immense power sinking back beneath his skin until he was just a young man in a tattered orange jacket again. He was breathing a little heavily, but he was standing, victorious. Everyone stared at him. Issei, whose jaw was on the floor. Kaneko, whose golden eyes were wider than anyone had ever seen them. Kiba, who felt like he had just witnessed the birth of a legend. Akeno, whose smile was one of pure, unadulterated shock. And Rias, who was looking at Naruto not as an ally, but as a force of nature that had just landed in her backyard. Xenovia finally found her voice. Her faith was dead, her mission in shambles, but she had just seen something she could understand. Absolute, undeniable strength. "Who? What are you?" she whispered, the question now holding a completely different weight. Before Naruto could answer, the world seemed to hold its breath. A brilliant pillar of white light descended from the heavens, landing on the opposite side of the courtyard. Simultaneously, a rip in the fabric of space opened, a swirl of darkness from which a second figure emerged. The white light faded to reveal a colossal figure in ornate silver and gold armor. 12 magnificent white wings spread behind him. His presence was overwhelming, a wave of pure, holy power that was suffocatingly serene. From the tear in space stepped a man with long black hair, wearing a dark trench coat. He had 12 black, feathered wings, just like Kokobil, but his aura was completely different. It was calm, inquisitive, and carried the weight of ancient knowledge. The leaders had arrived. Michael, the acting head of heaven. Azazel, the governor general of the fallen angels. They paid no attention to the groaning, defeated Kokobil. They ignored Rias Grimori and her peerage. Their eyes, one set glowing with holy light, the other with curious darkness, were fixed on one person. The blonde teenager who stood in the center of the wreckage, looking back at them with the calm, steady eyes of a man who had just changed the world and was waiting to see what it would do about it. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. A Table for Kings and Dragons. The silence that followed the battle was heavier than the fighting had been. It was a silence filled with the weight of revelation and the suffocating presence of beings who could unmake reality with a stray thought. On one side stood Michael, the chief of seraphs, his 12 white wings bathing the ruined courtyard in a serene, holy light that felt both comforting and judgmental. On the other was Azazel, governor general of the fallen angels, his 12 black wings absorbing the moonlight, his posture one of relaxed, academic curiosity. Between them, Kokobile lay groaning in a crater of his own making. A disgraced general on a lost battlefield. And at the center of it all stood Naruto, the dust of the conflict settling on his shoulders, his expression unreadable. Azazel was the first to speak, his voice a smooth, amused baritone that cut through the tension. Well, Koka-chan, you always did know how to throw a party. Though I must say, the guest list is a bit more eclectic than usual. He completely ignored the fallen cadre, his sharp, intelligent eyes fixed solely on Naruto. Now you are something else entirely. I've been monitoring this little spat from a distance, and I have to say, that was the most interesting tailed beast bomb I've ever seen. Mostly because I've never actually seen one before. Where, oh where, did a human boy pick up a trick like that? The question was casual, but it was loaded with a terrifying depth of knowledge. He knew the name of the technique. He knew what it was. Michael's voice, when it came, was a stark contrast. It was like the chiming of 1,000 bells, resonant and pure, yet carrying an undeniable authority. Azazel, this is not the time for your academic inquiries. A great transgression has occurred here. One of your own has tend the fragile peace that holds our worlds together. Oh, I know, Azazel said with a dismissive wave of his hand. He's a naughty boy. He'll be grounded for a few millennia. His gaze never left Naruto. But you're missing the bigger picture, Mikey. The transgression isn't the interesting part. The reaction is a human, wielding power that dwarfs a high-class devil and makes a mockery of a cadre-class fallen angel. That's not just a transgression. That's a paradigm shift. Naruto met the fallen angel's gaze without flinching. He was going to kill innocent people. I stopped him. The simplicity of the statement seemed to amuse Azazel even more. Yes, you did. Very efficiently, too. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking what you are. That golden energy, it felt like a star being born. And the fox inside you, he's an old one. Very powerful, very angry. Kurama bristled within Naruto's mind. This one sees too much. I am Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto stated plainly. And my friend's name is Kurama. That's all you need to know. It was a declaration, not an explanation. A line drawn in the sand. Rias, seeing her opportunity, her moment to step onto the stage, moved to stand beside him. Her crimson hair was a bold slash of color against the holy white and fallen black of the archangels. Naruto Uzumaki is an ally of the House of Grimori, she said, her voice ringing with a newfound confidence. She was not a child asking for help, she was a king declaring her territory. His actions tonight were in defense of this town, which is under my protection. Any issue you have with his methods, you have with me. Azazel's lips quirked into a genuine smile. Oh, I have no issue at all, little Grimori. In fact, I'm quite delighted. Things were getting so dreadfully boring. Michael's serene expression finally showed a flicker of concern. He looked past Naruto to the two broken figures in the church's combat suits. Irina was still on her knees, sobbing quietly. Xenovia was on her feet, but she was trembling. Her knuckles white where she gripped Durandal. Her world was a ruin, and the architect of that ruin was standing right in front of her. Xenovia Quarta, Irina Shido. Michael's voice was gentle, filled with a sorrowful compassion. The words you heard from that madman, they held a kernel of truth. A truth we have sought to shield our children from for their own good. The burden of that knowledge was not yours to bear. So it's true. Xenovia's voice was a harsh, broken whisper. God is dead. The father we all knew and loved passed during the Great War, Michael confirmed softly. His system, his love, his grace, it lives on through us. We carry his will. Your faith has not been in a lie, but in the legacy he left behind. It was a carefully worded, beautifully delivered piece of political spin. But to the warrior who had just seen her entire life's purpose revealed as a hollow shell, it was meaningless. The legacy. Xenovia laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. The legacy is a lie we tell ourselves to keep fighting. We are orphans, swinging swords in the name of a dead man. She looked at her holy sword, Durandal, as if seeing it for the first time. The brilliant, holy light it emanated now seemed like a cruel joke. Your faith is your own, child, Michael said sadly. You are, of course, welcome to return to the church. We will help you through this crisis. And then what? Xenovia shot back, her voice raw. Go back to fighting devils in the name of a system. Forgive me, Lord Michael, but my faith was not in a system. It was in a person. And he's gone. She turned her gaze, filled with a strange, desperate clarity, to Naruto. You didn't fight for a god or a king. You said you fought to protect people. I saw it. You command more power than anyone here. But you used it to defend. Naruto simply nodded. That's my way. My ninja way. Xenovia took a deep, shuddering breath, a decision crystallizing in her eyes. She walked over to Rias, her movements stiff. Rias Grimori, I can no longer serve a heaven without a god. But my sword still craves a purpose. I wish to serve you. Let me become your devil. The declaration shocked everyone. Issei's jaw dropped. Kiba's eyes widened. Akeno let out a low whistle. For a devout exorcist to willingly fall and become a devil was unheard of. It was the ultimate act of rebellion, the ultimate statement of lost faith. Rias, however, saw the opportunity. She saw the powerful warrior, the wielder of Durandal, and the immense political statement her defection would make. I would be honored to accept you into my peerage. Xenovia Quarta. Xenovia. No, Irina cried, scrambling to her feet. You can't. This is wrong. What is right anymore, Irina? Xenovia asked, her voice devoid of anger, only filled with a vast, empty sadness. At least here, I know who I'm fighting for. While this personal drama unfolded, Azazel was watching Naruto with a calculating gleam in his eye. You know, he said, drawing everyone's attention back to the leaders. This whole mess has given me an idea. Kokobeel's little stunt proves that there are elements in all three factions who aren't happy with this Cold War. It's a powder keg waiting for a spark. He gestured towards Naruto. And now we have a brand new, nuclear-powered spark that nobody knows how to classify. He looked from Michael to Rias. I propose a summit, a peace conference between the leaders of the three great factions. The Seraphs of Heaven, the four great Satans of the Underworld, and the Cadre of the Grigori. Let's get everyone in a room and hash this out. Turn this fragile truce into a real, lasting alliance. And let's have it right here. In Kuo Town. The suggestion was audacious. A meeting of the most powerful beings in the world, in a small town on Earth. That is, a bold proposal, Azazel, Michael said, considering it. Bold times, Azazel countered with a shrug. Besides, it seems to be the center of all the interesting activity lately. His eyes twinkled as he looked at Naruto. Think of it as a coming-out party for our new friend here. A way to introduce him to the world stage without everyone immediately trying to kill or capture him. It was a trap, and a brilliant one. By making Naruto the centerpiece of a peace conference, it would force all factions to acknowledge him and treat him as a legitimate power. Rather than a rogue element to be eliminated. It would protect him, but it would also chain him to their politics. Rias saw the implications immediately. My brother, Sears Lucifer, would agree to such a meeting. I will relay the proposal. Excellent, Azazel grinned. He snapped his fingers. Kokobeel, still unconscious, was suddenly wrapped in chains of dark energy and lifted into the air. I'll just take out the trash. And then I'll be in touch. He opened another tear in space. Before he stepped through, he gave Naruto one last, appraising look. Uzumaki Naruto, you have made the world a much more interesting place. I look forward to our next chat. With that, he and his prisoner were gone. Michael let out a long sigh, the holy light around him softening. It seems events are moving faster than any of us anticipated. He looked at Irina, whose face was stained with tears. "Child, my offer still stands. But if you choose another path, know that the love of our Father does not abandon his children. Even when they stray." He gave a solemn nod to the group, and with a final, brilliant flare of white light, he vanished. The courtyard was suddenly, shockingly quiet. All that was left was the Grimoire peerage. A shell-shocked new recruit, a heartbroken angel in training, and Naruto. They stood amidst the wreckage, the adrenaline of battle fading, replaced by the heavy reality of what had just transpired. They had stopped a war, but in doing so, had become the central figures in a political game with stakes so high they were impossible to comprehend. "Well," Akeno said, breaking the silence, her usual playful tone sounding a little strained. "That was certainly a night to remember." Naruto looked up at the moon, which was now shining down on them from a clear, peaceful sky. He had come to this world seeking, he wasn't even sure what anymore. But he had found a battle, found allies, and now found himself entangled in the machinations of gods and kings. He felt a strange sense of belonging. It was chaotic, dangerous, and utterly insane. It felt just like home. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. The Weight of a New Allegiance. The Occult Research Club building felt different. The familiar scent of lemon polish and old books was now mingled with the lingering ozone of demonic transportation and the faint, metallic tang of shed blood. The battle was over, but its ghosts remained. Seated around the mahogany table where maps had been replaced by steaming cups of tea that nobody was drinking. Exhaustion was a heavy cloak draped over all of them. Issei was slumped in his chair, staring at his red gauntlet as if he'd never seen it before. Kiba sat silently, polishing his sword with a slow, methodical rhythm that did little to hide the tension in his shoulders. Ko was methodically working her way through a family-sized bag of potato chips, the sharp crunching sound the only thing breaking the thick silence. Xenovia stood by the window, her back to the room, her hand resting on the hilt of Durandal. She was a statue carved from grief and uncertainty. Her world had ended, and she was waiting to see what, if anything, would be built in its place. Not far from her, Irina stood weeping silently. Her mission over, her faith in tatters, and her best friend lost to the enemy she was sworn to fight. Naruto watched them all, a silent observer. He had seen the aftermath of battle 100 times. He knew the quiet shock, the delayed processing of life and death stakes. These were children, he realized. Powerful, yes, but still just children thrown into a war their ancestors had started. The silence was broken when a large, crimson magic circle flared to life in the center of the room. From it, the holographic image of a man with long, crimson hair identical to Rias's shimmered into existence. He wore elegant, regal clothing, and his handsome face was a mask of grave concern. Despite being a mere projection, his presence filled the room with an authority that dwarfed even Kokobeel's. This was Searsx Lucifer, one of the 4 great Satans and Rias's older brother. Rias, his voice was calm, but it held an undercurrent of immense power. Report. Rias, who had been composed until now, stood a little straighter. "Brother, the situation is resolved. Kokobeel has been defeated and taken into the custody of the Grigori's Governor-General, Azazel." Searsx's ethereal eyes swept the room, taking in the exhausted faces, the broken exorcists, and lingering for a long, unreadable moment on Naruto. Azazel was present, and Michael. They arrived after the battle was concluded. Rias confirmed. Azazel has proposed a summit between the 3 factions to forge a true alliance. He suggested Kuo Town as the location. Bold, even for him, Searsx mused. His gaze returned to Naruto. Sharp and analytical, "Your report mentioned an outside party. A human ally of incredible power who was instrumental in Kokobeel's defeat." "This is Naruto Uzumaki," Rias said, gesturing to him. Naruto met the Demon King's gaze without a word. He felt the probe, the gentle but impossibly powerful tendril of demonic energy that washed over him, trying to gauge his strength. To understand his nature, it was like being measured by a mountain. Kurama let out a low growl in his mind. This one is a true power. He hides it well, but the depth of his energy is vast. Be wary, Kit. Searsx's eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. The probe had told him nothing. Naruto's energy was like a calm ocean. He knew it was deep, but he could not perceive the bottom. It was not a hostile act. Merely a fact that was both intriguing and deeply unsettling. Naruto Uzumaki, Searsex said, his tone formal. On behalf of the underworld, I thank you. You have averted a catastrophe that would have plunged us all into a war we could not afford. The debt the devil race owes you is significant. No debt, Naruto replied simply. I just stopped a madman from hurting people. The Demon King smiled, a faint, genuine expression, a noble sentiment, one that is all too rare these days. Rias, I will accept Azazel's proposal. Prepare the necessary arrangements. I will be in contact soon. He gave his sister a proud, reassuring look. You have handled this well, my dear sister. I am proud of you. With a final, lingering look at Naruto, the projection dissolved, plunging the room back into silence. The spell was broken. It was time for the final act of the night's tragedy. Xenovia turned from the window, her face set like stone. Rias Grimori, I am ready. Rias nodded, her expression becoming solemn. Are you certain? This cannot be undone. My former life is already ashes, Xenovia said, her voice hollow. I choose to be reborn from them. The ritual was quiet and deeply personal. Rias brought out a single, black chess piece, a knight, glowing with a soft, crimson light. She explained the process to Xenovia, her voice gentle but firm. It was a contract, a binding of souls. Xenovia would gain the power and longevity of a devil, but her life would be sworn to Rias, her king. Naruto watched from the corner of the room, a strange feeling twisting in his gut. In his world, loyalty was earned, given freely through bonds forged in fire and shared experience. This felt cold, transactional. It was a system, a mechanism for acquiring power and soldiers. He saw Xenovia kneel, saw Rias place the knight piece against her chest, and watched as it dissolved into her body in a flare of red light. He saw the flicker of pain on Xenovia's face, quickly suppressed, as her very essence was rewritten. He saw her stand, no longer human. Her aura had changed, now tainted with the familiar energy of a devil. She was stronger, but she had a chain around her soul. He did not like it. Irina let out a choked sob, turning away from the sight of her friend's fall from grace. Her part in this story was over. After a tearful, whispered farewell to a stoic Xenovia and a clumsy, heartfelt goodbye to Issei, she was escorted to the edge of the Grimori territory by Kiba. She would return to the church, a soldier with a shaken faith, a loose thread in the grand tapestry of their world. With the departure of one and the transformation of another, the dynamic in the room shifted. Xenovia, now a devil and a member of the peerage, seemed to shed the weight of her grief, replacing it with a warrior's simple, straightforward purpose. She looked at Naruto, her gaze direct. Uzumaki, she said, her tone formal. You fight with tactics I do not recognize, but with a clarity I respect. I would ask that you train me. My swordsmanship is powerful, but you proved tonight that power alone is not enough. It was a stark admission from the proud warrior, and a sign of her new, pragmatic worldview. Before Naruto could answer, Issei stepped forward, his own face set with a new determination. Me too, Naruto-san, what you taught me about control, I felt it. For a second, when I hit that monster, I felt my power obey me. I need to learn more. I can't be the guy who needs saving anymore. I have to be strong enough to stand with everyone. Naruto looked at them, the fallen exorcist and the perverted pawn, both asking for his guidance. He saw the genuine hunger to grow, to be better. He gave a small, approving smile. The training will be hard. Harder than anything you've experienced. I won't go easy on you. We wouldn't expect you to, Xenovia stated flatly. As the new members of the Naruto fan club, as Issei mentally dubbed it, were making their pledges, Akeno glided over to Naruto's side. A fresh cup of tea in her hand. You have a talent for collecting strays, Naruto-kun, she purred, her violet eyes dancing with a light that was more than just her usual playful teasing. I seem to, he admitted. Accepting the tea, making a demon king proud, earning the interest of the Grigori's leader, and taking on 2 new students all in one night, she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a seductive whisper. You truly are a dangerous man. But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. There was a vulnerability there he hadn't seen before. Azazel, he is the one who took my mother from me. He is the leader of the fallen angels who cast out my father. The confession was sudden, a crack in her perfectly crafted mask. Naruto looked at her, seeing past the flirtatious queen. For the first time, he saw a lonely girl, torn between her devil and fallen angel heritage, a girl who had just come face to face with the embodiment of her life's pain. "He's a part of your past," Naruto said, his voice quiet, devoid of judgment. "That doesn't mean he has to be a part of your future. You decide who you are, Akeno. No one else." Akeno stared at him, her lips slightly parted. She had expected pity, or perhaps anger on her behalf. What she got was simple, profound acceptance. It disarmed her completely. For a moment, her mask slipped entirely, and he saw the real Akeno. A woman of immense pain and immense strength. She quickly recovered, her seductive smile returning, but this time, it was different. Warmer, more genuine. Era, you really do know just what to say." Their quiet moment was interrupted by a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. It wasn't a pressure, like before. It was a subtraction, a patch of reality in the corner of the room, near an unoccupied armchair. Simply seemed to become less real. And then, she was there. Ophis was sitting in the armchair, one leg tucked under her, looking for all the world like a bored child who had just appeared from thin air. Which, of course, she had. Panic seized the room. Rias was instantly on her feet, a ball of destructive energy forming in her hand. Kiba and Xenovia had their swords half drawn. Kaneko stood in front of a startled Issei, her small body a rigid shield. But Naruto held up a hand. "Stand down." He had felt her arrival. It was different this time. Less oppressive, more curious. Ophis ignored everyone else. Her void-like eyes were fixed on Naruto. "You were very loud," she stated, her voice the same unnerving monotone. "The fallen star screamed when you hit him. Then he became quiet. I liked that." She slid off the chair and glided towards him, her movements unnervingly smooth. "Your noise is strange. It is bright and hot. But the one inside you, the great silence, it quieted the star's noise. I want to understand." She reached out a small, pale hand, not towards his face, but towards the seal on his stomach. Her fingers hovered just inches from his jacket. Kurama went absolutely berserk inside him. "Do not let her touch it, Kit. Her power is the void. It is oblivion." Naruto didn't need the warning. He could feel it. Her touch was not a physical thing. It was an existential one. He gently but firmly caught her wrist before she could make contact. Her skin was cool, unnaturally so. "If you want to understand me," he said, his voice level, "then you can ask. But you will not touch this." Ophis looked down at his hand holding her wrist, then back up at his face. There was no anger or frustration in her empty eyes. Only a flicker of something new. Confusion. No one had ever stopped her before. No one had ever been able to. "You are a paradox," she whispered. "Loud and quiet, finite and infinite. You stopped me." She tilted her head. "Valley will find this very interesting." "Valley?" Rias asked, her voice tight. "My rival," Ophis said, pulling her wrist free from Naruto's grasp. "He seeks strength. You are now the strongest thing he has seen. He will come to fight you. He is very noisy. You should make him quiet, too." And with that cryptic warning, she dissolved. Not in a flash of light or a swirl of darkness, but by simply ceasing to be there. The patch of reality she had occupied snapping back into place. The room let out a collective, shuddering breath. They had just been in the presence of the infinite dragon god, who had issued a warning about a rival who was now targeting their new ally. Rias looked at Naruto, her mind reeling. First Kokobile, now a peace summit, and a direct threat from the leader of the Chaos Brigade's rival. Since Naruto had arrived, her life had accelerated from a simple jog to a world-breaking sprint. She came to a decision. She walked over to him, her expression firm, that of a king making a royal decree. "Naruto Uzumaki, this is no longer just a temporary arrangement. The Occult Research Club, Kuo Academy, this is your home now, if you'll have it. You are one of us. We will face this summit, and this valley, together. As a family." Naruto looked around the room. At the new Devil Knight, Xenovia, who nodded in stoic agreement. At the determined pawn, Issei, who gave him a shaky but resolute thumbs up. At the silent rook, The Swift Knight, the Thunder Priestess Queen, and the Crimson-Haired King. They were a bizarre collection of misfits, castaways, and broken toys. It was perfect. He grinned. All right, but I'm not cleaning the bathroom. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Calm in the Coming Storm. The sun rose over Kuo Town, its gentle light a stark contrast to the violent, reality-bending events of the previous night. For most of the town's residents, it was just another day. For the members of the Occult Research Club, it was the first day of a new world. Naruto was the first one awake, a habit forged through years of early morning drills and the constant threat of assassination. He stood on the dew-kissed lawn behind the clubhouse, the same lawn where he had effortlessly dodged Hiba's blades and first felt the infinite pressure of Ophis. He closed his eyes, drawing in the natural energy of this new world. It was different from the energy of his homeland, thinner, threaded the alien energies of devils and angels, but it was still there. A quiet, persistent hum beneath the surface of things. He didn't have to wait long. As the sun climbed higher, he was joined by his two new, unlikely students. Xenovia arrived first, dressed in a simple tracksuit that did little to conceal her athletic build. She carried Durandal, its holy power a muted thrum against the demonic energy she now possessed. Her face was a mask of stoic determination, but her eyes held a flicker of uncertainty. She was a warrior without a flag, a sword without a master, now bound to a new cause she was still trying to understand. Issei stumbled out a few minutes later, yawning, his hair a mess. He clutched his left arm, where the boosted gear lay dormant. His face was a mixture of groggy reluctance and a desperate, burning desire not to be left behind. "All right," Naruto said, his voice cutting through the morning calm. He tossed a single leaf to each of them. "You know the drill. Control. Focus. Stick this to your forehead." Issei groaned. "This again. I thought we were going to learn cool, flashy moves." Xenovia, however, simply took the leaf and pressed it to her forehead, closing her eyes in concentration. As a wielder of a holy sword, she understood the concept of channeling energy, of will made manifest. But this was different. Demonic power was inherently emotional, chaotic. To tame it, to make it perform such a delicate, precise task, was a monumental challenge. The leaf fell. She picked it up and tried again without a word. "Flashy moves are useless if you can't control the power behind them," Naruto said. His gaze fixed on Issei. "Your boosted gear multiplies your power. That's its function. But you treat it like a hammer. Every problem is a nail. You just hit things harder. That's a good way to get yourself killed." He walked over to a small pebble on the ground and nudged it with his toe. "Your gear boosts you every 10 seconds, right? What if you didn't use that boost for a punch? What if you channeled it into your legs for a single, explosive burst of speed? What if you released it as a shockwave to knock an opponent off balance? What if you used it to force your body to take a hit that would otherwise kill you?" He looked Issei dead in the eye. "Your sacred gear isn't a hammer. It's a heartbeat, a rhythm. You need to learn to dance to its song. But first," he tapped Issei's forehead, "you need to learn to control the first step. Stick the leaf." The training was a brutal exercise in frustration. For hours, they did nothing but try to master the leaf exercise. Issei's initial groans turned into grunts of frustration, which eventually settled into a grim, sweat-soaked silence. Xenovia, to her credit, was a rock of perseverance. She failed, and failed, and failed again. But each time, she would take a deep breath, center herself, and try once more. By midday, Rias and the others emerged to watch. They saw Issei finally manage to hold leaf for a full 5 seconds before it fluttered off, a triumphant whoop echoing across the lawn. They saw Xenovia, her brow furrowed in concentration, finally make the leaf stick, a small, almost imperceptible sigh of victory escaping her lips. "He's not just training their power," Hiba observed quietly, his arms crossed. "He's training their minds, their patience. He's breaking them down and building them back up," Akeno added, her violet eyes watching Naruto with a deep, analytical curiosity. "It's a terrifyingly effective method." Naruto declared a short break for lunch. As Issei and Xenovia collapsed in a heap on the grass, ravenously devouring the sandwiches Akeno had prepared, Naruto began the second phase of the training. He turned to Xenovia. Your opponent knew your weakness, he said bluntly. You're a powerhouse. Durandal can cut through almost anything. So, you swing it. Hard. You're predictable. Xenovia's back stiffened, but she didn't deny it. It has always been enough. It wasn't enough against Freed Selzen, and it won't be enough against anyone who can think, Naruto countered. He bit into an apple, the crunch sharp in the quiet air. We're going to spar, but you won't be fighting me. He formed a single hand sign. With 2 puffs of smoke, a dozen Naruto shadow clones appeared, surrounding Xenovia in a loose circle. They were all grinning. You'll be fighting us, they said in unison. Your goal isn't to beat us. It's to land a single, clean hit on the real me. He pointed to himself, the only one not grinning. The clones can't hurt you badly, but they can annoy you. They'll use tricks, misdirection, substitutions, everything you're not used to. Begin. What followed was not a spar. It was a master class in frustration. Xenovia charged, Durandal a blur of holy light. She cleaved through 3 clones, but they dissolved into smoke. As she recovered, a clone from behind threw a handful of dirt in her eyes. While she was blinded, another tied her shoelaces together with a piece of wire. She roared in frustration, unleashing a wave of power that dispelled all the clones in a 10-foot radius, but when the dust settled, Naruto was standing calmly on a tree branch, 30 feet away. Too slow, he called down. You're still thinking like a knight. Think like a ninja. See the whole board, not just the piece in front of you. Meanwhile, Ai's training was less dramatic but equally challenging. Naruto had him sitting in a meditative posture. Forget the leaf. Now, I want you to summon your gauntlet. But don't let it boost. Just hold the power. Feel it thrumming under your skin. Then, I want you to release a tiny fraction of its power. Not from your fist, from the palm of your hand. Just enough to knock over this pebble. He placed he small stone on a stump 5 feet away. It was an exercise in finesse. Issei's first attempt sent a wave of red energy that missed the pebble and blew all the leaves off a nearby bush. Too much, Naruto said, not even turning around from Xenovia's spar. You're still shouting when you need to whisper. Feel the power. Don't just unleash it. The day wore on. The sun beat down. Sweat and frustrat. Ion were the main currencies of the training ground. But slowly, imperceptibly, something began to change. Xenovia started to anticipate. She stopped charging blindly and began to watch the clones' movements. Looking for the subtle tells that would betray the real Naruto. Issei, his face a mask of concentration, finally managed to release a tiny pulse of red energy from his palm that tipped the pebble over. A small victory, but one that felt more significant than any punch he had ever thrown. As dusk began to settle, Naruto finally called a halt. His 2 students were physically and mentally drained. But their eyes shone with a new light. It was the light of understanding, of potential unlocked. That evening, the atmosphere in the clubhouse was subdued. Rias was poring over documents sent by her brother. Her face illuminated by the glow of a magic circle. The preparations for the summit were underway. Kuo Academy would be the neutral ground, and the Grimoire Peerage, as the host territory's governors, were responsible for security. It was a monumental task. Naruto found her on the balcony, staring out at the city lights, a worried frown creasing her brow. Heavy as the head that wears the crown, huh? He said, leaning against the railing beside her. Rias let out a small, tired sigh. Something like that. My brother, Michael, Azazel, they are beings who have shaped history. And they are all coming here. To my territory. The pressure is immense. One wrong move, one security breach, and the war Kokobile failed to start could ignite right here. You can handle it, Naruto said simply. She looked at him, surprised by his confidence. What makes you so sure? Because you're not a politician, Rias, he said, turning to face her. You're a leader. A politician worries about appearances. About saying the right thing. A leader worries about her people. I saw it last night. Every decision you made, every risk you took, was to protect them. He gestured back towards the clubhouse. Your peerage. They don't follow you because you're a Grimoire. They follow you because you're you. Trust that, and trust them. His words were a balm on her frayed nerves. He wasn't offering empty platitudes. He was stating what he saw as a simple fact. He saw her, not as a demon king's sister or a high-class devil, but as Rias. And he believed in her. A warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with demonic power. "Thank you, Naruto," she said, her voice soft. That helps. More than you know." Their moment of quiet connection was shattered by a sudden, violent explosion that rocked the entire building. An alarm, a high-pitched magical shriek, began to wail. "Report," Rias commanded, her king persona snapping back into place. Akeno's voice echoed from inside. "AP, powerful energy signature just appeared in the town square. It's a stray, a big one. It's attacking civilians. Let's go," Naruto said, his eyes already hardening. "Training's over. Time for a field test." They arrived at the town square in a flash of crimson light. The scene was one of chaos. A grotesque creature, a mishmash of a lion, a goat, and a serpent, was rampaging through the square. It was a chimera, far more powerful than the ones Kokobile had summoned. "Issei, Xenovia, you're up front," Naruto commanded as they materialized. "Apply what you've learned. Kiba, Akeno, Kaneko, civilian control. Get everyone out of here. Rias, coordinate." The orders were instant, decisive. Issei and Xenovia didn't hesitate. They charged. "Balance breaker," Issei yelled, but not to attack. He used He surge of power to coat his body in the red dragon armor. He was faster, stronger, more durable. The chimera breathed a torrent of fire. Xenovia, instead of meeting it head-on with Durandal, slid to the side. Her movements more fluid than before. Issei, now, Issei, remembering Naruto's words, didn't punch. He slammed his gauntleted fists together. Boost, boost, boost. Dragon shot. He fired. A concentrated beam of draconic energy not at the beast, but at the ground beneath its feet. The pavement exploded, knocking the massive chimera off balance. It was an opening. Xenovia seized it, her blade flashing. Slicing deep into the beast's exposed leg. The chimera roared in pain and fury, swiping at her with its massive claws. But just as the claw was about to connect, the world seemed to slow down. A figure appeared between Xenovia and the claw. He was a young man with silver-white hair and a calm, almost bored expression. He wore a simple V-neck shirt and jeans. He didn't look like much. But from his back sprouted a pair of ethereal, glowing white dragon wings. He caught the chimera's building-sized claw with one hand, stopping it dead. The casual display of strength was so absolute it was comical. "Pathetic," the young man said, his voice laced with a profound disappointment. He tightened his grip, and the chimera's arm shattered with a sound of cracking stone. The beast shrieked. "Divide," a voice echoed from the white wings, and the chimera's powerful aura visibly dimmed, siphoned away. The young man's own power flared, and he casually backhanded the creature. The chimera, which had been giving Issei and Xenovia a desperate fight, was sent flying across the square, crashing into a fountain in a boneless heap, its life force extinguished. He turned, his calm, violet eyes sweeping over the stunned members of the Grimoire peerage. They landed on Issei's red dragon armor, and a flicker of interest appeared. Then, they moved past him, past Rias, and locked onto Naruto. "So," the young man said, a small, confident smile playing on his lips. "You must be Naruto Uzumaki. Ophis told me you were loud. And you must be Valley," Naruto replied, his own posture relaxed, but his senses on high alert. This boy's power was immense. It was calm, controlled, but it was a vast, deep ocean of strength. He was the White Dragon Emperor. The rival of Issei's own boosted gear. Valley Lucifer, he corrected. The name dropping like a bomb into the stunned silence. Descendant of the original Lucifer. And the current wielder of the vanishing dragon, Albion. He gestured to Issei. "It seems my rival, the Red Dragon Emperor, has found a rather unimpressive host." He ignored Issei's indignant squawk, his attention solely on Naruto. "Ophis finds you interesting. Your power is a paradox. A fusion of life and something much older. I, however, am a much simpler man. I seek only one thing. The ultimate fight. A battle against a worthy opponent." His smile widened, and it was filled with a chilling, predatory glee. "You defeated Kokobile. You have the attention of Michael and Azazel. You might just be the one I've been looking for. At the coming summit, Naruto Uzumaki, you and I will fight." I want to see if your noise is truly as loud as they say. He didn't wait for an answer. With a final, dismissive glance at the others, his white wings flared, and he vanished into the night sky, leaving behind a dead monster and a group of heroes who had just been made to feel like absolute amateurs. The weight of his challenge settled over them, a palpable thing. The coming storm was no longer a distant threat. It now had a name, a face, and the power to back up its every claim. The Peace Summit had just become the preliminary round for a battle of titans. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The Summit of Kings and Dragons. The corpse of the Chimera dissolved into motes of black and red energy, its brief, violent existence erased from the world. In its place, the challenge of the White Dragon Emperor hung in the air. A palpable force more threatening than any physical monster. Valley Lucifer. The name was a thunderclap, echoing in the stunned silence of the Grimoire peerage. Issei's balance breaker armor faded, the red scales receding into his skin, leaving him feeling small and utterly powerless. He had just started to feel like a contender, a piece on the board with some value. And then the true king of the game had appeared and swept the pieces from the table with a casual flick of his wrist. A descendant of the original Lucifer, Rias whispered, her mind racing to process the implications. And the host of Albion. The two heavenly dragons, destined to fight for all eternity, have been reincarnated in this era. Here, in my town. Naruto's gaze remained fixed on the spot in the sky where Valley had vanished. He felt no fear, no intimidation. He felt a familiar, exhilarating hum in his blood. It was the feeling he got when he first faced Neji, then Gaara, then Pain, then Sasuke. It was the feeling of standing before an insurmountable wall and knowing, with absolute certainty, that he was going to find a way to break through it. He's strong, Naruto stated, not as a warning, but as a simple, undeniable fact. Stronger than Kokobile. He's controlled, focused. He made me look like a joke, Issei muttered, his fists clenched. The humiliation was a bitter pill. He treated you like a joke, Naruto corrected, turning to face him. His eyes were sharp, analytical. There's a difference. He wanted to get in your head, to show you the gap between you. Don't let him. Let it be fuel. The next time you face him, you won't be the same boy he swatted aside tonight. The words, a simple reframing of his failure, struck a chord in Issei. It wasn't just a humiliation, it was a benchmark. A line in the sand he now had to cross. They returned to the clubhouse, the weight of the coming summit now magnified 100-fold. It was no longer a political meeting to prevent a war. It was a gathering that would be attended by their newest, most dangerous enemy. The days leading up to the conference were a blur of frantic activity. Rias was a whirlwind of motion, a true king commanding her court. She was in constant magical communication with her brother and the Citri clan, coordinating security protocols, setting up defensive barriers, and managing the logistics of hosting the most powerful beings in the known world. Akeno was at her side, her usual playful demeanor replaced by a sharp, efficient focus, her network of familiars scouting every inch of the school grounds. Naruto, however, intensified the training. The stakes had been raised, and he would ensure his allies were ready to meet them. He was relentless. He put Xenovia through a gauntlet of shadow clones, not on an open field, but within the dense woods behind the school. He forced her to fight in a constantly changing environment, to use the trees for cover, to listen for the snap of a twig, to anticipate attacks from above and below. He was breaking her knight's conditioning, forcing her to see the world not as a dueling ground, but as a three-dimensional battlefield. She began to learn. Her swings became less about overwhelming power and more about precision. She started using the flat of Durandal to parry, to create openings rather than just trying to end the fight with a single blow. His training for Issei was even more unorthodox. He forbade him from using the balance breaker. That armor is a crutch, Naruto told him plainly. You rely on it to protect you. I want you to learn to protect yourself. He had Issei practice channeling the boost into different parts of his body. For an entire day, Issei did nothing but dodge rubber balls thrown by a dozen shadow clones. The goal was not just to dodge, but to use a single, timed boost to his legs to move just enough to avoid the hit. It was an exercise in timing, energy conservation, and spatial awareness. Slowly, clumsily, Issei began to get the hang of it. He learned to feel the 10-second rhythm of his sacred gear not as a countdown to a punch, but as a tool he could use in 1,000 different ways. The day of the summit arrived. Clear and unnaturally calm. Kuo Academy was a fortress. Powerful barriers, invisible to the human eye, shimmered in the air. Sona Citri and her entire peerage patrolled the perimeter, their faces grim and professional. The Occult Research Club members stood in the main hall of the old school building, which had been converted into a neutral meeting ground. A large, round table stood in the center, a silent testament to the magnitude of the event. The arrivals began. A pillar of holy light descended into the courtyard, resolving into the serene figure of the Seraph Michael, accompanied by the swordswoman Irina, who looked nervous but resolute in her role as a guard. Next, a tear in space opened, and Azazel stepped through, a casual, charismatic smirk on his face. He was alone, his presence a confident statement that he needed no guards. Finally, a grand, crimson magic circle glowed on the floor of the hall, and Sears X Lucifer appeared, his wife Graphia Lucifuge, the silver-haired queen of annihilation. At his side, the three leaders took their seats. Their combined presence was so immense that the very air in the room felt thick, heavy with potential. Rias and her peerage stood along the walls, their role as hosts making them both guards and witnesses. Naruto stood near the main doors, his arms crossed, his expression placid. He was a silent observer, but Eve, Rai leader in that room, was acutely aware of him. He was the catalyst, the variable that had forced this historic meeting. "Shall we begin?" Sears X said, his voice calm and regal. The talks were tense, a delicate dance of diplomacy between ancient enemies. Azazel, surprisingly, was the most direct. "Let's be blunt. My boy Kokobile was an idiot, and he's been dealt with. But he's not the only one who feels this peace is a lie. We have factions within all our groups pushing for war. The Chaos Brigade is actively trying to destabilize us. And now," he gestured with his thumb towards Naruto, "we have new power players on the board who don't fit into our old equations." The boy's actions, however unorthodox, prevented a war, Michael stated, his voice chiming. "He should be seen as a blessing, not a complication." "I don't disagree, Mikey," Azazel countered. "But a blessing of that magnitude attracts attention. Dangerous attention." As if on cue, the atmosphere in the room shattered. A pressure, equal in weight to the three leaders combined, slammed down on the school. It was arrogant, confident, and utterly dismissive of the sacred ground it was trespassing upon. A young man in AVN X shirt and jeans was suddenly standing in the center of the round table, his feet planted right on the polished wood. White dragon wings unfurled from his back, bathing the room in an ethereal glow. Valley Lucifer had arrived. "Sorry to interrupt your little chat," he said, his violet eyes scanning the room with a bored amusement. "But I'm here for my appointment." His gaze locked onto Naruto. Instantly, Sears X was on his feet, his aura a crushing wave of demonic power. "Valley, you were not invited. This is a peace summit. Stand down." "Hello, Uncle," Valley replied with a mocking smile. "I'm not here to talk peace. I'm here to test my strength. Your opponent is me, traitor." Issei roared, his red gauntlet flaring to life. Valley didn't even glance at him. The little dragon whelp barks. How cute. He took a step off the table, landing silently on the floor. "Naruto Uzumaki, you and I, right here, right now." Before the leaders could intervene, Naruto held up a hand. "It's all right," he said, his voice calm. He walked forward, meeting Valley in the center of the room. "If we're going to do this, we do it outside. I have no interest in breaking their furniture." Azazel leaned back in his chair, a fascinated, almost academic grin on his face. "I, for one, would love to see this. A field test, you might say." Sears X and Michael exchanged a look of profound disapproval, but they knew they couldn't stop it. Valley was a force of nature, and Naruto was an equal and opposite one. To try and stand between them would only escalate the conflict. With a resigned sigh, they all teleport. Ed to the school's massive athletic field. A new barrier, far stronger than the one that had contained Kokobile, was erected by Sears X and Michael, encasing the field in a dome of shimmering gold and crimson light. The leaders and the Grimoire peerage stood as spectators to a battle that would define an era. "Let's set some ground rules," Valley said, stretching his arms. "No world-ending attacks. Let's try to keep this a technical fight, shall we? I want to see your skill, not just your firepower. Works for me, Naruto replied, dropping into his familiar fighting stance. The battle began not with an explosion, but with a whisper. Valley vanished. He moved with a speed that made Kiba look like he was standing still. He appeared behind Naruto, his hand aimed at the back of his neck in a precise chop. But Naruto was already gone, having dropped to the ground and swept his leg out, forcing Valley to leap back. Good instincts, Valley commented. What followed was a masterclass in hand-to-hand combat. It was a blur of motion, a symphony of perfectly timed blocks, parries, and strikes. Valley was a technical prodigy, his every move economical and deadly. Naruto was more unpredictable, his style fluid and creative, incorporating feints and acrobatic movements. Valley landed the first clean hit, a sharp kick to Naruto's ribs that sent him sliding back several feet. Divide. The voice from Valley's wings echoed, and Naruto felt a portion of his own energy being siphoned away, strengthening his opponent. It's pointless, Valley said. The more you fight, the stronger I become. Your power is just a meal for my divine dividing. Then I'll just have to hit you with more than you can eat, Naruto retorted. He formed a hand sign, and a dozen shadow clones burst into existence, swarming Valley from all sides. Valley just smiled. He moved through the clones like a phantom, his hands and feet a blur. Each clone he struck was instantly destroyed. It was effortless. While he was occupied, the real Naruto formed a Rasengan and charged. Valley saw it coming. He allowed the last clone to attack him, and just as Naruto's Rasengan was about to connect, he teleported, using a short-range spatial magic. Reappearing behind Naruto and slamming a fist coated in white draconic energy into his back. Naruto was thrown forward, tumbling across the field. He stood up, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip. Base form wasn't enough. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, the golden pigment of Sage Mode was around them. The natural energy of the world flooded into him. His senses exploded. He could now feel every move Valley made before he even made it. The fight shifted. Naruto began to dodge Valley's attacks with minimal movement, his precognitive abilities evening the odds. He managed to land a solid punch to Valley's jaw, a blow powered by senjutsu that made the White Dragon Emperor stumble back, a look of genuine surprise on his face. Sage arts. Valley chuckled, intrigued. You really are full of surprises. Fine, I suppose it's time to get a little more serious. A brilliant white light enveloped him, and when it faded, he was encased in his balance breaker armor. A suit of sleek, white, draconic plate mail, with 10 ethereal wings beating silently behind him. This was the armor of the vanishing dragon. Now, the real fight begins, Valley declared. His speed and power increased tenfold. He was no longer just a martial artist, he was a god of war. He flew at Naruto, his fists glowing. Naruto met the charge, creating a massive Rasengan infused with Sage Chakra. The two attacks collided, and the resulting explosion shook the Lita's barrier. They were trading blows that could shatter mountains, their movements so fast they were just streaks of gold and white to the horrified eyes of Issei and the others. This is incredible, Kiba breathed. They are on a completely different plane of existence, Rias said, her voice filled with awe. Naruto knew he couldn't maintain this. Valley was still dividing his power, weakening him with every exchange. He needed more. The golden chakra of the nine tails erupted around him, his KCM-1 mode activating. He was now a beacon of golden light, his speed and power matching Valley's armored form. He created chakra arms, using them to block and strike simultaneously, overwhelming Valley with a multi-pronged assault. The tide of the battle turned again. Naruto's sheer ferocity and the versatility of his chakra arms gave him the edge. He managed to grab Valley's leg, swing him around, and slam him into the ground, cratering the field. Valley rose from the crater, his white armor unscratched, a wild, ecstatic grin on his face. Yes, this is it. This is the battle I've lived for. He brought his hands together. But all games must come to an end. A terrifying power began to gather. A pressure that made even the Demon King and the Seraph narrow their eyes. Juggernaut Drive. The incantation began to echo from his armor, a chant that promised ultimate power at a terrible price. That's enough. Searsex's voice boomed, his power flooding the field, pressing down on both combatants. This contest is over. Azazel appeared between them, his casual smile gone, replaced by a look of stern authority. Valley, don't be an idiot. You know you can't control that form yet. You'll destroy yourself and half of Japan with it. Valley's power surge subsided, the chant cut short. He looked from Azazel to a panting, golden Naruto, and his ecstatic grin returned. Fine. The point has been made. His armor receded, and he was once again just a young man in a t-shirt. You are worthy, Naruto Uzumaki. You are truly worthy of being my rival. This was a good warm-up. He looked over at Issei. You have a long way to go before you can even stand in our shadow, D-Drake. With a final nod to Naruto, he vanished, his presence gone as quickly as it had appeared. Silence returned to the field. The barrier fell. Naruto's golden chakra faded, leaving him breathing heavily, but standing tall. It was a draw, a brutal, earth-shattering draw. The summit was, in a strange way, a success. The battle had proven Azazel's point more than any words could have. They were living in a new age. An age of monsters and miracles, and they needed to stand together. The treaty was signed. Later that night, Naruto stood on the clubhouse balcony, looking up at the stars. The world was quiet again. He had faced down a fallen angel warmonger, become an ally to devils, trained a new knight, and fought the White Dragon Emperor to a standstill. It had been a busy week. You were neither loud nor quiet tonight, a soft, monotone voice said from beside him. Ophis was there, perched on the railing, her void-like eyes gazing at him. You were both, she continued. A storm in the silence at its center. I still do not understand you. There's not much to understand, Naruto said with a tired smile. I just do what I think is right. Ophis tilted her head. Valley wants to defeat Great Red. He thinks that is the path to becoming the strongest. He is wrong. Strength is not the key. She turned her infinite gaze to him. The Great Red fills the dimensional gap with his dreams. It is a world of endless noise. It is what keeps me from my silence. She slid off the railing and stood before him. You quieted Kokobile. You matched Valley's noise. Maybe you are the one who can quiet the Great Red. It was not a threat. It was not a request. It was a simple, terrifying proposition from the most powerful being he had ever met. She was offering him a purpose in this new world. A quest of cosmic proportions. To confront a being of infinite dreams, to bring silence to the dragon of dragons. Naruto looked from the infinite girl to the peaceful town below, to the home where his new, strange family was sleeping, and he felt a sense of clarity he hadn't had since he arrived. He had a home to protect, friends to stand with, and a rival to surpass. And now, it seemed, he had a dragon to fight. He looked at Ophis, and for the first time, he gave her a true, full-throated, Uzumaki grin. Sounds like fun. Chapter 10 End.